Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, and we are still here in Las Vegas. You know, I do have a 3-day rule at Vegas, and I'm running up against the edge of it here. I hope I've got a real hot shower waiting for me at home. But it's been a great AWS reInvent. In many ways, it's, I think, a watershed moment in AWS history with a lot of the announcements here. We've got a lot to bring you today, including a new version of a new generation of the Graviton chip that was announced yesterday. You know, hardware sexy. There's no doubt about it. We spend a lot of time talking hardware. Let me introduce you to our gang, though. We've got a lot more to cover, too. But if I want to introduce you to these two guys, they've been sitting here. To my far right, you know our friend Mitch Ashley, future analyst. And the man in the middle, the bard, Mike Vizard, who, happy anniversary to Mike and Charlene, by the way.
There you go.
So, Mike, congratulations on the anniversary.
Thank you. There's a lot of bookies in Vegas that are losing money.
Yeah. They took the under. They took the under. But no, seriously, congratulations. Lucky you. But let's talk AWS reInvent.
All right. So they previewed the new Graviton 5, which is 25% better than the Graviton 4, both of which are based on an ARM design that AWS custom builds itself. And the other thing that was interesting is they revealed for the third year in a row, roughly half of the new instances being spun up on the AWS clouds are Graviton chips, which is, you know, a significant number of workloads that probably used to be on an x86 processor somewhere. And it also turns out that all the managed services that AWS provides by default run on AWS custom silicon. They do not run any of those things on any processors that they offer other customers elsewhere. And basically they're saying, look, there are certain databases that require an x86, so, you know, we'll provide that capability. And if you really want NVIDIA, we'll provide that capability as well. But you know, they themselves are going with their own custom silicon just because it's less expensive for them to run. And they say, hey, the TCO is better. And of course, it's more profitable for them as well. But it's pretty clear that AWS is saying, you know, we're leading heavily with our own custom silicon here first. And everything else is kind of, you know, if you want it, you can have it kind of mentality. But you got to actually like raise your hand and say, make sure I'm running on that.
That's why it's such a different world for Intel these days, right? I mean, and it's, you know, Apple has its chips, et cetera, all right on down the line. It's about price performance. Right? You mentioned cost, right?
It's price performance. It's also control. Supply chain.
That's true. Yeah, in this day and age, very important.
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting thing because, look, we all grew up in basically a Wintel monopoly.
Yeah, it was Intel inside, baby.
Yeah. Even Mac was running Intel back then. And I sometimes think that ARM doesn't get enough credit for cracking this case wide open.
It's huge. Yeah.
Right? It was ARM that led the way to these custom chips and compatibility. And you know, it wasn't easy getting Microsoft to port Windows to ARM. Or, you know, it was easier with Linux and some of the open source stuff because you had the army of, you know, crowdsourced open source engineers who could make that happen. But this is the future we see now, we live in now, where we're not locked into Intel inside. We're not locked in, you know, AMD, poor AMD spent all those years making a great 86 chip. And, you know, a little late for that, though they're here with the GPUs maybe. One thing I've got to mention, though, I want to set the record straight, and I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, tell me so. AWS doesn't own foundries. As a matter of fact, AWS doesn't actually design the chips. They hire out.
This is all OEM outsourced, right? They provide the specs and the design.
Yeah,
do some of the design themselves.
Yeah, they do some of the design, but they're not building a foundry.
No, they're not.
All OEM, and that's the beauty of the ARM design, right? It's licensing the technology to be able to design your own chips, and are the new Gravitons and Trainiums
what foundry are they using?
I don't know. They don't say, and I think they just shop around because there's a ton of these ARM foundries out there now that you can use to generate. It's a 3 nanometer chip is the latest one, so they're down to that particular size generation. But the thing about it is that it gives them options, right? They can move from one foundry to the other. They're not as dependent upon a particular.
Well, that's the point, right? Is they're in the chip business, but they're not a foundry. They're not a direct manufacturer. They're an OEM client.
They have chips designed for themselves, or they design them themselves.
It gives them the ultimate flexibility to have chips made to their spec. It gives them the ability not to be subject to price wars, supply chain, geopolitical kind of instances. And you know what? To me, it validates Pat Gelsinger's vision of Intel, which is be the foundry that makes all of these different chips, not just your own. We're living in a world where this isn't just an AWS thing. Google has their own. Microsoft wants to go their own way. Oracle, IBM, everybody wants to kind of own their own custom silicon, if you will. It's back to, Mitch, when we first started selling security appliances, right? There were the ones that were just x86 inside that we OEM'd from Dell.
They were like,
and then there were the ASIC ones, purpose built that really couldn't kind of handle the kind of traffic that we were seeing and stuff like that. It's the same thing playing itself out right now.
Yeah, they are saying that a Java app runs pretty smoothly without any tweaking, but some of the C apps and the Rust apps require a little bit of tweaking to get onto the ARM processor, but they're saying that's gotten a lot easier. And they're also pointing out that the classes of workloads now are starting to move higher up, and you're going to see more with this latest processor of things like databases, analytics, and electronic design automation was another use case that they were looking at. And so the percentage and the types of workloads that can run on these things are starting to creep up into the higher end. And you can imagine they're saying they're on a 2-year cadence for the next generation. So if we're in 2028, you're probably looking at a new class of processors that can run just about anything that you have on those ARM processors. And it's going to be an interesting world because you see Microsoft doing pretty much the same thing. And if all the cloud providers are doing all the same thing, it's like, well, what is the market opportunity for the Intels and the AMD?
As a foundry, not as an x86 producer.
Well, and this didn't all happen, overnight. ARM has been on a multi-year quest of getting organizations, open source projects, getting drivers, getting everything running on ARM. And they've added a lot of support to the open source projects, for example.
Absolutely.
I remember seeing 3 years at one of the conferences talking with ARM folks there. Why were they there? And that was the whole reason. If you kind of build the stack up so you've got support, and it's closing the gaps where you've got them when that occurs, and as opposed to we can't do it because there's such a big hill to climb to get there to run on. We're not there anymore. We're actually in a good place.
I don't know if they're thinking about it or has said anything of the kind, but I could imagine a world where maybe there's an ARM processor optimized for AI inference servers.
I would be surprised if they're
thinking about. I think we'll see it sooner than later. Though, makes me wax nostalgic a little bit, right? Think back before x86 was the data center machine of choice, right? I was an UltraSpark guy, right?
DEC.
You had DEC and you had Silicon Graphics and you had, think back to some of those machines and the difference. And you know what? And it wasn't just the chip, but each chip had its own flavor of Unix, right? There wasn't just Linux. Think about before there was this Linux. Yeah. But we had all the Unixes. And
you had Motorola. I mean,
Motorola was a big
on, the Macs were.
And you know what? Let's talk about Apple in this context. They kind of led the way, not in the data center certainly, but on the desktop. They showed it's possible.
Device,
right? And mobile, right? They showed it's possible. And we should talk about that too. You have, what we consider mobile the sort of lightweight, more energy efficient, the Qualcomm Snapdragons and stuff. They're running laptops and desktops all over. Might we see a Qualcomm enter into the data center space? Because, hey, we're building $3 trillion of data centers. That's a pretty big pie.
It's possible.
If there's a market, right? If they see themselves in that a market and they see a competitive edge that they can bring something to market, they will.
Let me throw one other thing out at you guys and tell me what you think. Is this a lock-in play by AWS? If you optimize your app for Graviton 5, does it make it a hassle to move over to Azure or Google?
It's one more little thing that makes you kind of want to stay with AWS, because you might have to refactor your app a little bit to take advantage of whatever optimization those guys have put together, right? So eventually you might decide that it's not worth the effort. So
because that is what we lose by having a PAX 86 world, right? Where you do have that portability.
I think you're more likely going to have stickiness from the AWS services that you're using, the Dynamo DBs and all the things that you're tied into the ecosystem.
yeah.
Less so at the chip level, because there's not going to be that much differentiation.
Well,
I don't think. I think they're doing it for cost performance. They don't want to lock customers in that way. That's not their game. They want to lock in on software services.
so, but AWS does have this kind of interesting little lock-in that they do use, right? They have this Nitro system.
They do.
And Nitro is essentially offloading the running of the VM and the storage and the security onto a separate NIC card. Well, I can't replicate that over at Google per se. So if I'm going to take advantage of that, then I got to go figure out what is the version of that over at Google. And I'm not sure what Google has that is the equivalent of their Nitro, but it's a significant amount of effort to kind of rework all that.
It is, and it's an advantage from a security perspective and security within AI. That's kind of how they really pitched it 2 years ago when they went into more depth about how they built Nitro or how they pulled things off the chip into the separate.
Yeah.
It's kind of a chip within a chip or a chip on a board that
Yeah.
offloads those processes.
Yeah, if you go talk to the AWS engineers, they're like, that's the best thing we ever did was Nitro, because that's what gives them a performance edge in their mind that differentiates them from other cloud service providers.
Absolutely. Hey, we got to move on to our next segment here, okay? So we're going to take a break. We're coming at you from Vegas, AWS reInvent. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions, your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you, including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface. Your personal life.
Hey folks, we're back and we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about, well, security in AWS. They've made generally available this security hub that they announced earlier this year, and it's basically a huge data lake for aggregating and analyzing all the telemetry data that you collect from all these different sources. I think AWS has been doing this internally for themselves for years, and this is a productization of that capability for their end customer. The concept is that you're going to collect all these signals and the metadata, and when you see an anomaly, there'll be an alert, and then eventually an agent will look at that and kind of pass on a message to some DevOps tool that says, hey, there's an issue here, maybe with this configuration. Do you want us to refix that for you? Automatically, it might close that loop, but eventually we seem to be moving down this path where a lot of this is going to get automated. And then the other thing they were talking about is, how they're going to move everybody to short-lived tokens, because part of the issue is that too many developers are making use of longer time tokens that when they get stolen can be used for longer periods of time. So they're trying to say to everybody, hey, use a short-lived token so that if that laptop goes missing, it won't be as big an issue. And they're also pointing out the fact that they tied their MFA to the browser security. So they look at the browser and then they say, hey, if you're authenticated, then at least we can pass that authentication in a federated way back to the CLI tool. So they're, making some efforts here to like make the whole thing more secure and address a lot of the issues that folks have with cloud security. But I kind of always scratch my head about this. When we talk about concerns about cloud security, are we really talking about, we think that the cloud is less secure than on-premise? Or are we really saying we don't know how it works and we don't have the processes and the tools, so we kind of still prefer the on-premise mindset because we don't want to learn something new? I mean, how much of this is cultural versus technical?
Well, I think these announcements are more about similar to what Cisco did with their AI, with their Cisco Data Fabric, right? Which is kind of the same idea of, instead of just aggregating things together, let's put more contextualization around it. Rather than just a bunch of siloed data kind of co-located together, let's put it into some kind of a data lake or some data method, data structure that can be used by their tools and help reduce some of the complexity. I think that's a big part of it, is since you don't run all these tools yourself, you don't necessarily know how to integrate them, or maybe you can't, right? Especially if they're a third party like the cloud providers. So you have to rely on them to do this. So I assume this is a big push from customers to say, we need easier ways, we need less complexity about managing security in the cloud, at least for the data fabric part of it.
I think the definition of shared responsibility keeps shifting a little bit.
There's only one responsibility, and that's yours. Doesn't matter. I mean, you can talk about shared all you want.
You could share
Ultimately, it falls on
administration, but you don't share responsibility. Look, here's Shimmy's take on this one. Right? All the noise about cloud security, there's only one thing in cloud security that, well, you're responsible for everything, but there's only one area where you could really kind of rig the deck. And that's identity and access management. That is the killer app of cloud security. And that's what this is all about, IAM. In terms of token, this is an AWS's idea. NIST has been pushing this. Google's been pushing this.
You see it in the browser.
They want browser certificates to expire.
Yeah.
We went from yearly to quarterly. They want to go to 30 days and get to a week or a day even, right? Because good security practices is if we could make you re-authenticate as often as possible, the least chance we have that you are.
If it's stolen,
say you
somebody
are.
can. It's only good
Right,
for
and there's a short window, right, of its viability. So this is kind of security 101. Now, that being said, bravo to AWS for doing this, because this is what cloud providers need to be doing, right? Google's on board with it. I'm not sure about Microsoft. AWS appears to be. But I think this is the future we're going to live in, right? We're going to MFAs and biometric and stuff like that. If we could just get rid of these damn passwords.
I just wish that the MFA stuff was a little smoother, and it's not like, every time I'm kind of like logging into something, I'm like, damn it, where's my phone? I got to get the authenticator.
Yeah, you got to have your phone next to you in the world of MFA. My problem is I'm a multi lot of things, but I'm a multi-device user. Right, so it's like, I've authenticated the browser on this device, but I haven't authenticated the browser on that device. I use about 5 different devices, and I'm constantly playing the authenticate this particular version of this particular browser on this particular device, and the permutations drive me crazy.
And it's still clunky. I mean, it's clunky even with passkeys. I mean, yes, it's simple when you can use it, but oftentimes it's like, well, the passkey didn't work on that one. Or choose what you want to use, which passkey or which passkey or password.
I forget what passkeys I use.
So we kind of kick ourselves when we do good things for security by making it complex to use, by presenting options.
It defeats the purpose.
Flexibility brings complexity, and that's often where we fall down on security.
I would like a clear ID for all this and be done.
Charge $45 if you don't have a clear ID when you show up at the airport.
No, that's real ID.
Okay, all right.
Real ID. Yeah, well, look, someone's got to pay.
In theory, though, right, we're getting to a world where there will be sensors everywhere. So at some point, the sensor should be able to know that you is you and send that information over to somebody and say, yep, that is Alan at the edge of that particular device. And maybe we will get to something that's not nearly as clunky.
From your mouth. Let's take a break. We're going to ruminate on that a little bit. We're going to come back and talk about our third session today here for our special Techstrong Gang from AWS reInvent.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey folks, we're going to continue a conversation we've been having all week about AI and DevOps and DevSecOps, and the folks at Harness are here, and they announced that they're adding support for the AI coding tool from AWS called Kiro. And we've been trying to figure out what is going to be the relationship between how far our DevOps process is going to be shifted left, because Kiro has a lot of AI agents that will in parallel do things that historically a DevOps engineer did, including observe and maybe fixing code and patching. But Harness is saying that they too will have AI agents, and their AI agents will communicate with the Kiro AI agent. And then I did talk to the AWS DevOps people, and they were saying, we want to manage that process more, but we do not want to provide the code repository or the CI/CD platform either. They're like, we just want to layer the agents across to take care of the friction. And if the agents are from third parties, that's fine. But they seem to be trying to find a happy medium here. I mean, what's your take?
I see a lot of Harness electric billboards in my window up here on the 34th floor. Harness has a big presence here. Kudos to them for not just laying down, rolling over and saying, we'll use the AWS agents. I think in a world of billions and billions of agents, there's room for CI/CD DevOps specialists such as Harness to have a very effective DevOps group of agents that help you with DevOps, where, in no disrespect for AWS, but their agents will probably be the 80-20 agents, right? 80% of the functionality of what that dedicated Harness agent is, but at 20% of the price. And I think that may be enough for some people. And there may be other people, especially if they're already using Harness for CI/CD, who say, no, I'll use the Harness agents, and the fact that it does integrate with the Kiro and the AWS infrastructure is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting because when I talked to the AWS folks, they were saying the part that they really want to get after is what occurs after code gets checked in and when it gets deployed in the production environment, because they were saying there's just a lot of friction, there's a lot of inefficiencies, and they want to build, the AI framework to manage that. And if that involves, agents from the providers of the repositories and the CI/CD, so much the better. But you've been looking at that workflow forever. What is it in that between when I check in the code and it runs in production that is like creating this infinite amount of friction?
Well, first, kind of like one thing that I see happening with all the vendors is folks have realized we can't be the agent of everything. We can't be the AI of everything. What do we do well? What's our part in this ecosystem? And how do we take an AI strategy that builds on our strengths as opposed to going after, in this case, it doesn't make sense for AWS to go after all the development agent process part of it or become the code repository or whatever. That's got huge inertia behind it already with other options, right? So rather than forcing people into an AWS solution for that, they are tackling it with the IDE though. The part of it, it's deployment. We've always run into this with CI/CD, Alan. It's like CI, big, little CD, right? Because that trust around automation of deploying things into production, we've always had steps to review and checklists and production ready, whatever kinds of things. Now, not everybody does that. You know, you can get ups it all the way into production, but there's a lot more caution about releasing it. I think it goes back to the trust issue. How much we'll automate, but we still won't kind of turn it over to even a Perl script or a Python script, whatever might be underneath running that. Will we do that with AI? I think that's the goal. How do we move that? And by the way, I think Harness is super smart for not saying, well, we're just playing our little sandbox here. No, everybody, whether it's security, whether it's deployment, et cetera, compliance, they're moving up they're shifting left by getting into the agent ecosystem.
AWS did say something that's going to warm your heart. They were saying, hey, we're using AI and coding tools and agents to write more code than ever. And if you don't have a CI platform to manage all that, you most certainly will need one soon.
Yeah,
So
I think that's for sure. I think there's something to be, to your point on the CI/CD stuff. Harness is a little bit of a different animal than some of the other CI/CD players in that, and I've spoken about this with Jody, their founder, Jody Bonsai. They were designed from the get-go to be CD. Most of the CI/CD solutions out there started life as a CI,
Right.
and then, added the, big CI, little CD. Harness is big CD, little CI. So it is different. And it did embrace GitOps pretty early on and say, hey, we work really well in that GitOps type of environment and that GitOps model. So I think they are well positioned to do this, perhaps more than some of the other DevOps players.
The only thing I hear out there that people are looking at for CD as an alternative is you hear a lot about Argo, which is, as far as I can tell, looking at it, is a much more graphical approach to CD rather than programmatic.
That depends if you're using the pure open source Argo CD,
Right.
or are you using like the Octopus deploy version of it, which is more graphical and has a better UX. Suppose, look, UX is what you like, may not be
I had the
what I
beholder
like.
on that.
But,
Yeah.
but those people tend to argue that the CD side of the equation is really, an ops function, and it's not something that the developer drives as much. And
so
so
now you're getting into the nitty gritty of what's
we're-
dev, what's ops, and what's DevOps.
What's
We're all in the
Welcome to the religion.
Yeah, yeah. I don't talk about politics and religion. You know me. But
Excuse me.
be that as it may.
You got a little choked up there. Excuse
Yeah. But you know what? It is going to be interesting. But hey, as I said before, Harness has a huge presence out here. They obviously feel this is where their people are. And they're making a play for them. In Mitchell, they're shifting left, moving up. But they want to be a player in this new ecosystem.
Absolutely do. And I've heard their story, and they've got a great story. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is very impressive.
I was on the show floor yesterday walking around, and I was just taking note of all the DevOps companies that were here. I mean, they're all here with big booths, and including some outfits I never heard of. And I was like looking at some of their booths, and I was like, wow, this is huge, and I have no idea who you are. And
Well, it's interesting. I overheard a vendor talking yesterday. Hey, we got to go reserve our booth for next year because we need a bigger booth and we're too far out. We got to be more in the center. Let's take money from other events and double down here because this is where our audience is.
Interesting.
And you don't hear that very often at shows these days.
Usually it's complaining about how expensive it is.
It is. And this company was already in for $100K. So they're moving. Now, I did hear, and I cannot divulge sources here, even if you want to,
Methods and sources, can you?
yeah, deep throat, but easy. But I heard Reinforce might be going away. Well, not going away, but they're going to merge it into reInvent. It's not going to be a standalone.
The security conference.
Yeah.
Reinforce. I haven't heard that. I could see that. I mean, well, reInvent started as a developer conference. I mean, I went to the first reInvent. It was because that's who was really.
But I'm going to
embracing.
tell you something. This reInvent was a return to its roots. It was developer
the
first.
reemergence of the developer
Right,
conference.
a developer-led conference. But it'll be interesting to see if Reinforce gets merged into this or stay standalone. You know, look, we have RSA, we have Black Hat as big security conferences. Reinforce was never that size, but it had a nice following. And what I liked it was
They're good
on the East Coast. And
I think there's something to be said for bringing everybody together to have the same conversation at the same time about the same thing.
I think the problem is it's already really hard to put 60,000 people into the same conversation. I don't know if I want to add 20 more.
I would argue spin off and do a real developer conference.
So says the developer guy.
Backpacks and hoodies. I'm serious that that's the crowd you're going after. You want the GitHub style. You want the build or style kind of event or the Ignite style event. Tech Exchange, those kinds of conferences that are let me give you an example. You go to IBM Think versus IBM Tech Exchange, two very big differences, right? It's all about sandboxes and trialing things and working with tools and experimenting and showing demos and codathons and hackathons and things like that. Versus you go to the corporate conference, it's all about kind of the bigger things that are happening at the mothership. I think developers, if you want to attract developers, give them what they want, right?
Fair enough. Hey guys, we've got to wrap up. You know what? It's been an amazing week out here at reInvent. So much news. I think we'll still be digesting all of this for the weeks ahead on the gang and throughout our Techstrong properties. But Mitch, I appreciate you coming down
Bet.
every day. Mike, as always, doing yeoman's work. Walking that floor, ferreting out the latest, the underground, the seldom seen.
Putting the tee on the ball for the three of us to hit it on the Techstrong Gang.
I appreciate it. I thank all of you who've been catching any of our videos this week. I think we probably have done 20-something videos in the 3 days, maybe more. So it's been great. We had the Futurum analyst on. We had Daniel Newman on. Our friends, I can't help but thank SUSE. Oh, this isn't their logo, but we've had their logo behind here. SUSE has partnered with us this year in bringing this to you. We love coming out to reInvent. It was a little warmer in Vegas in the winter. See what we could do about that. But we hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow, though, with our regular gang show, from Boca. And I think, anyway, and God willing, and we'll go from there. But for now, on behalf of Mike and Mitch and everyone from Futurum and Techstrong and SUSE, thank you for joining us. It's a wrap. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, welcome back here to Techstrong TV. My next guest is the founder and CEO of a company called iCOUNTER. His name is John Waters, and let's welcome him to Techstrong TV. Hey John, how are you, man?
Doing well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So John, we were talking a little bit before we went on camera here, and we, talking about what it takes. Like, you're going to be a little bit crazy or really, really believe in what you're doing to go out and found a company and try to make a go of it. I've done it a number of times. People out here have, but a lot of people out here haven't. John, let's hear a little bit about your story, your journey, your makeup that led you to go out here and found iCOUNTER.
Yeah, sure. A long journey actually in the cybersecurity industry, since it's a relatively new industry in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
Those of us that have been in it for 20 plus years have seen quite a bit of change.
Say that again.
I did it by accident. I made a bad investment in a company and tried to go fix it. So I ended up
Oh
running.
God.
So that dates all the way back to 2002. I was a finance and economics guy. I managed all the money for the founder First Data Resources. So I was CEO of the holding company. He died in 98. I spun out on my own and I started looking at different investment themes, and .com had played out, telecom had played out. So I looked at cyber as an investment theme because I thought it had secular growth forever and it was inefficient as hell. And
Yes, it
through
was.
that lens, I started looking at the problem set in the industry, and which was amplified after September 11th for me was an indication of the age of unconventional warfare and the construct of where are new domains of war going to be. It's not your traditional land, air, sea, space. It's a new complex world that's going to leverage technology. And I determined that cyber would be a domain of warfare. So then you start studying the traditional military principles, and intelligence leads operations in everything they do. You got to study the opponent to understand how to resource against the fight, what to bring, to the battle space. You got to understand the opponent, the battle space, their capabilities. And there was no understanding of that in the cyber industry. Everybody was fighting the fight at the line of scrimmage, where we're on the attack surface trying to, look at flashing lights and figuring out what to do with it. So there was a couple of companies in the industry in 2002. The total addressable market globally was 5 million in the cyber intelligence industry. And I thought I'd embark on some lunacy of creating an industry. So I bought a company out of bankruptcy called iDefense, which was the first cyber intelligence company that was founded in 1998. They'd been through bankruptcy. They were going through bankruptcy again, and literally bought it for $10 in 2002. Yeah. And the second management team was in there. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to back these guys and try to coach them along on how to build a company. And I realized pretty quickly that wasn't going to work. So I asked my wife for a kitchen pass for what would be 2.5 years with 5 kids at home, young kids.
Oh God.
And started commuting to DC where the company was. So that was in January of 2003. So I bought it in May of 2002 and began to run it in 2003. And that's where I embarked in my career as an operator in cyberspace. And that trajectory, that business changed dramatically when we began to source zero-day vulnerabilities all over the world. This is chronicled in Nicole Perloff's book. This is how they tell me the world ends, the history of cyber warfare.
Sure.
In chapter 3, where the whole thing is about iDefense journey. And it was the whole idea of buying zero-day vulnerabilities in the market to where all these researchers all over the world had no ability to do the right thing because they couldn't get in touch with the software manufacturers, the Microsofts of the world, the Oracles. They didn't know how to reach out to them. So we created responsible disclosure. We would buy those 0 days. We would validate them. We'd work with all the vendors. They would then publish the patch and give credit back to us and the researcher that found it. And we began to really modernize and hold accountable the software developers to really patch their problems quickly. And a lot of these guys were reticent to that. They were like, who are these guys telling us we got flaws in our software? Of course, now there's bug bounties and the community is really well braced, try to help, get vulnerabilities closed out. So that iDefense was using intelligence to defend better against zero-day attacks, attacks against, vulnerabilities in your system. We sold that business in 2005. And then in 2006, in December, I incorporated my second business, which is called iSight. So iSight partners set out about how you gain global visibility from emerging threats around the world, including nation states. And we began to build decentralized collection capability all over the world. So we were in kind of the most hated neighbor construct of our architecture. So we'd cover China through Taiwan, Russia through Ukraine, Iran through Israel, North Korea from South Korea, Pakistan from India. So we embarked on this journey of building out this global collection capability with centralized analysis in Virginia. And then we delivered what became considered nation state equivalent type of intelligence capability.
Threat intel.
To both augment the government, in the US and our allies around the world, and really served as a core operating partner for our large customers who were leveraging Intel to begin pivoting into an Intel-led security model.
Sure.
And
That's great.
Great journey. And iSight, a lot of those early folks are still there at the company. We were FireEye bought Mandiant, and the next year they bought us. We merged Mandiant and iSight a year later, and became Mandiant Intelligence. And then we ended up selling FireEye, and then Mandiant, we kind of liberated the good assets, and Kevin and I were running the business at the time. And then we sold that business to Google, and now it's Google Intel. So
sure.
But now you got an industry with $7 or $8 billion versus 5 million originally, and 390 plus companies. And we've created a big data problem for customers. To your early question,
yes, we have
journey. What did we do? It was a great concept. It was well executed. The industry followed. A lot of companies and entrepreneurs came to the fight and built all kinds of structure around. Here's all the adversaries. Here's all their tools and tradecraft. Here's the machine readable components of it, and all the process of plumbing it through a threat intelligence platform and integrating it in SIEMs and building detection rules and creating hunt scripts. That whole model, that operational model, has been in place now largely for about 10 to 15 years. And it's worked effectively, but it requires two things: latency and reusability. Because you think of the latency there, from us collecting on something that happened, to going through the analytical process, to pushing it to the customer, to them reconciling it with all their other threat alerts and all their internal alerts from all their own systems, to try to do something with it. You're talking weeks, from threat discovery to threat countermeasure implementation. The other thing it relies on is reuse. What I mean by that is the same adversaries with the same tradecraft and the same tools are going to use it over and over again until it's no longer successful. So our operating doctrine, and the operating doctrine of the government, frankly, back then, was if you're seeing something, it has most certainly been seen before. So if you can document everything you're seeing and say, if you see these registry keys, combination with these domains and these URLs and these hashes, that's this group using this playbook against you. Here's how you go find them, and move them out of your environment.
Excellent.
In an AI world,
John,
it's going to happen.
Sorry. I'm listening to this though, and I look, I've been in cyber. We didn't call it cyber, much as it was just called InfoSec or security. But I've also been in since the late 90s. And, hearing your journey is kind of making me nostalgic for look, that was the state of things then. And look, we've come a long way. The whole threat intel industry, and it is an industry now. You're right. It is an industry. I mean, it kind of burst on the scene. It didn't happen as quickly after 9/11 as I thought it would, because for me, 9/11 was on personal level and business level was a kind of a watershed moment. I really moved into security full time after 9/11. But it probably took, I'm going to say 5, 6, 7 years for the threat intel to catch up. And when I mean threat intel, as a technology, not as a craft.
That's right.
Right. I think as a craft, there were always sort of threat intel experts who was looking at what's going on, in adversarial places and bad actors. But as threat intel feeds and being able to input these feeds and then marry them to your defense posture and what you're doing, that took some doing. And it was the Mandiants of the world and I guess the iSights and so forth that enabled all that to happen. Of course.
Journey. The hiccup the industry hit was September 11th was obviously a catalyst for the changing battle space. But the bigger inflection point was really the Great Recession. Yeah. And the early innovators in the cybersecurity industry on the defender side rose the banks. So the banks were always the people that were deploying leading edge tech, new technologies, new capabilities, embracing venture capital based companies, back companies.
Yep.
And that came to a halt in 2008 and 9. Banks didn't buy anything. And there was innovation stagnation from 2009 to probably 2014.
Wow.
It's literally that long. And from 9 to 12, it was nothing. 12 to 14 was kind of like, making up for past sins to try to reestablish their basic capability. In the meantime, you saw innovation acceleration on the adversaries during that window. So you have innovation stagnation of a defender, innovation acceleration of the attacker. And that's when you see the elbow in the curve. If you track cybercrime losses in 2009, it surpassed narcotics, is the most profitable part of organized crime profits. They made more money from cybercrime than narcotics in 2009, and it just took off. And that's continued to widen.
It was out of balance. It went
right.
out of balance. Now, we've had a new, what's the word? I was just talking about it, recording our Techstrong Gang. AI, right? It's a new beginning or a new boundary layer where we're throwing up the cards in the air. Let's see how they land this time. And it's changed everything. And with this AI, you're out here with a new company now that you're founder CEO of called iCOUNTER. That's ICOUNTER. Tell us about that, John.
Yeah, so you look at the paradigm we're in today with AI-enabled adversaries, we're at another state of innovation acceleration in the adversaries and a bit of innovation stagnation on defenders. Well, you see all kinds of AI tools coming, not just used by the attackers, but also defensive technologies. 53% of budgets this year were flat or down for CISOs. And a lot of the businesses today are saying, look, you got to do an assessment of, hey, how we're going to deploy our own AI engines to build productivity gains in our company, how to do it securely. And yeah, you go look for some tools to help us defend better, but we got to go compete more effectively in the industry we operate in. So the CISOs have almost become like the governance officer of all the deployments of AI inside the companies that create means for an adversary to exploit them, leveraging your own AI infrastructure. So
Couldn't agree more.
So there's all kinds of hesitation and studying of the problem that's happening. Well, the adversaries don't have any of that. They're like, hey, this stuff is great. Let's see how I can leverage AI in every aspect of my attacker world. And you saw that recently where, Claude was leveraged for 80-90% of an automated attack through the entire phases of an attack. Let's talk through that. The long pole in the tent has always been reconnaissance. If you want to go steal the F-35 designs from the US, it's not going to reconnaissance that target overnight. It could take a year to profile a target. Once you profile the target, then you say, how do I build a durable advantage, understanding where those security gaps are, so I can exploit it, maintain persistence, and exfiltrate the data I need in the format I need over the timeline I need, and cover my tracks along the way. All of these components of an integrated attack are now being automated leveraging AI. So now automating the reconnaissance phase is allowing target selection very quickly. And then leveraging AI to build the attack capability to exploit that particular target is allowing customization at scale. What I mean by that is an adversary can go look at 1,000 targets, down select 100, and then leverage LLMs to produce attack methodologies to uniquely exploit each one of those 100 in an automated fashion. As you begin to do that, you can go from the scattered spiders of the world that can pick a sector and profile and build and execute a target in a matter of days. So latency is coming out of the system. And what I just talked about is reuse is coming out of the system, which leaves the traditional cyber intelligence model vulnerable, as attackers are essentially looking at every target as patient zero. And how do I craft something new and novel to target them with? Now, this is on the leading edge of attackers. It's a small part of the attacks happening. Still, the vast majority of attacks operate in the old paradigm. But the irony is, as we deploy AI, we are accelerating the obsolescence curve of the old approach. And what I mean by that is where I see AI being levered today with a lot of these new innovative tools is automated alert triage, basically studying every attack methodology that's ever been done before, executed before, and figuring out how to automate and triage those alerts down to find what's important. Automating the creation of a detection rule based on all the intelligence that you bring into your system. You see all the intelligence, you say, okay, that's we want to build a detection rule, leverage an LLM to create and implement a detection rule in your defensive layer. So the net effect is we're increasing our velocity to make reuse of attacks less effective. And as you do that, we effectively squeeze the balloon back into AI-enabled adversaries that will leverage LLMs to create new and novel attack methodologies for every target. That's a tough problem. So iCOUNTER's history and the capabilities built over years here, I took it over, renamed it, and spun it out of a company, is all around how to counter targeted operations against a specific company. And what we're seeing now is a shift in the target from create a same attack methodology and use it against thousands of companies, and maybe you'll be successful getting into 10 of them, to saying, let's build bespoke capability for everyone. So everyone is profiled and targeted uniquely. So the business model that we had built here was to counter an AI-enabled adversary using unique capabilities on every target, and how you get ahead of the game and stay left to boom, even as time compression's happening from target selection to attacker execution. So we live in an agile world, and advocate for defenders to spin out some kind of a special forces team on their defensive group. Use your traditional means to defend against most attacks. Create your SEALs, Delta, Rangers to work with us around an agile team of countering targeted threat operations. So they're spinning up operations at line speed. And that's what we do holistically. The first productized application of our capability will be in disrupting the third-party risk world, which has had very little innovation for the last decade. It's basically posture scores masquerading as risk scores amongst the third-party categories and saying, hey, your risk score is an 82. No, it's not. I mean, there's no threat in that equation. It's looking at web-facing applications that have vulnerabilities. It's automated assessment tools. It's attack surface monitoring tools. It's questionnaires. It's all around your security posture, which has its place. It's, vulnerability management, posture management.
No, it's part of the equation. Don't get me wrong. Let's not poo-poo it. It's part of the equation.
For sure. You get away with it.
Yeah.
But there's no threat detection and response for third parties. That's our product we're releasing in Q1. It's threat detection and response for your third parties. So where we can monitor all of your connected third parties holistically for all emerging compromise against the entirety of your third-party stack. All your interconnects, every time there's an open API, OAuth, share file, SEO connection, where you got data flows going back and forth that an attacker can find, we find your third parties. Don't tell us who they are. So once we discover your third parties and we understand the data connections, adversaries are increasingly shifting to bank shots into your environment through a third party's trusted connection. And in fact, you saw the number of breaches double in the last year executing that very strategy. Find a connected third party and use it as an attack vector in.
I think there's a few things there, John.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, what you're describing is sort of the difference between phishing and spear phishing.
Yeah.
Right? One is just casting a wide net and like walking down the hallway of a hotel and jiggling handles.
Exactly right.
And whenever doors open, that's the one I'm going in. Versus, I know there's big jewels in that room, right?
Exactly right.
Secondly, though, I was recently at Qualys had a conference called Rock On, ROCON. ROC stands for Risk Operations Center. And they're onto something, right? Qualys has been a leader in sort of garden variety vulnerability management and now patching for a while. But they made this realization that you're talking about, that in and of itself isn't a risk score. That's not your risk profile. in order to really understand your risk. And that's what the board wants to hear, right? The board wants to know what's my risk and what's at stake. In order to really understand your risk, you got to understand the threat. You got to have that threat intel. You've got to marry that to your posture and your, what you got going on. If you're going to truly have a picture of your real risk, right? And
I couldn't agree with you. You're spot on. I mean, I mean, we could finish each other's sentences. I mean,
well, yeah, I guess when you get old enough, John, that happens, right? And you're in this business long enough, there are certain truths that you realize.
that's right.
You mentioned another thing though, and again, it's something I think we're dealing with, which is as a cyber industry in general, a lot of boards are telling CISOs, look, I'm done buying you shiny new toys. Every year you want a new shiny toy, but you can't tell me how that is improving my risk posture. How is that decreasing my exposure? You're just buying me shiny toys. We're just buying you shiny toys. I think that's why it's important that these things come together. Lastly,
you see a mammoth difference, even down to the compensation level of the very top CISOs versus your average CISO. I mean, it's an order of magnitude compensation difference between the two. And the people that are paid the most are business leaders that happen to manage a security program. And they have mastered the art of speaking in terms of risk, which is the language that bridges the communication chasm between security and the business. And when you leverage the economics, like is my background, you got to say, here's how we're managing this budget that you've given me to buy down the most risk per dollar of investment so we can optimize
bang for the buck
investment, buying down risk. So the reason why we need these new capabilities deployed is the threat environment's changed in the last year that has rendered certain components of our defenses no longer effective. So we need to shift resources in this new layer of defense to counter this innovative adversary. That way we can buy down the risk associated with it. And if we don't do that, then we have to be willing to accept the risk of probably an additional 100 million of loss. Whatever the equation is.
Well, it's going to change on the business, but yeah, it's going to be substantial is the bottom line.
The risk of disruption this year is significant company. So
absolutely. And it's not getting easier, right? This AI stuff, they're just kind of feeling their way into it. John, unfortunately, this is a long 15-minute interview we did here for a half hour. I wish we had another hour to sit and talk, but we don't. I got to wrap up. We've got more to do. But for iCOUNTER, what's the website?
It's iCOUNTER.com. And to repeat what you said, we are not in the threat intelligence business like the other 390 company. We're in the risk intelligence business, because we only talk about threats that have intersected with a customer's environment, either their direct environment or through their connected third parties. Anything from us is high fidelity, low frequency, and presents a risk to our customers. That's the difference. Today, the threat intelligence industry throws threat information into the customer environment, and they have to determine where the risk is. People don't have time to do that anymore.
That's a huge difference. Hey, man, it's a pleasure meeting you. I'm sorry I didn't meet you before, to tell you the truth. You would think over 25, 30 years we would have ran into each other.
Completely agree with
you. Best of luck with iCOUNTER. Come back. We'll continue this conversation, right? It's a good conversation to keep having. All right. John Waters, founder, CEO of iCOUNTER. That's iCOUNTER.com. It's not just about a threat intel feed. It's about risk and intel. So check it out. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be back. Hey, everyone. We're back here live on our, you could say it's day 3 or you could say it's day 4. I've been here 4 days, but this is the 3rd day that the expo floor is open. So take your pick. But we're live here at KubeCon, Cloud Native Con in Atlanta. And I'm really happy to have my next guest. We've been kind of waiting for him all week, whether you call it day 3 or day 4. Jonathan Bryce. Jonathan is the executive director of the CNCF. But he has a dual role. He's also the executive director of the Open Infra Foundation, which is also now part of the Linux Foundation, or under the umbrella or whatever auspices of LF. Jonathan, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So Jonathan, I've wanted to ask you this because I admit I don't know the answer at all. What have you been doing that got you to this position?
Well, it all started in the 90s with the web. I spent a lot of time doing software development for the web, and back then that also meant you had to build your servers and put them in a data center. And then I joined a company called Rackspace. I was one of the early employees there, and we built out more data centers. And then I started a cloud company. Rackspace bought it back in, and that was where we launched OpenStack from.
Sure.
OpenStack started to really catch on, and so we wanted to give it a neutral home. And this was kind of before the Linux Foundation, as it is now, is really a foundation of foundations. And we actually talked with Jim Zemlin a lot in 2010, 2011. He was super helpful. And we created the OpenStack Foundation,
I remember.
which as we added other projects to it, we rebranded to the Open Infra Foundation in 2020.
Yep.
And finally, kind of full circle earlier this year, merged it into the Linux Foundation. So it's been a lot of all infrastructure, some software development, some hardware engineering and network engineering, and a lot of open source.
So let me ask you, in the 90s when you were building out servers for the websites, what was your platform of choice?
Well, one of the things that got me into open source is I was a teenager and I had no money, and I started doing this because I realized I could make more money than mowing lawns by building people websites, but I needed everything to be as cheap as possible. So it was x86 and Linux and the very first versions of PHP and MySQL and it was amazing.
Similar. I mean, I was older than you, but I started as a hobby building websites, and then we had a store, and same kind of thing. It was I still remember the first x86 server. We bought our own server to store them on in a little ISP in Long Island called LINet. They gave me free. They let me put a server in. It was a four-way x86 machine. And I thought I was a digital landlord. As we added more sites, I just plugged another hard drive in there, a bigger hard drive. Then the web really started taking off, and we wound up moving to Sun, Ultra Sparks, and we were running Netscape server over Solaris. We got acquired shortly after that. But that was the web then. That was the internet, and it was fun as all hell.
I know.
Good times. An interesting, your fact pattern with Rackspace is a common one. A lot of people started at Rackspace, went out, did well, fairly well, and got brought back in, right? Cisco does that a lot too, right? So it's an interesting thing. While we're on the topic though of OpenStack and Open Infra, you still are the ED for Open Infra Foundation. Haven't mentioned it once this week here on Techstrong.
Yeah.
Give us if you wouldn't mind,
Well, we just had our Open Infra Summit in Paris about 2 weeks ago, and it was awesome. Sold out crowd there. OpenStack is still the largest project in the Open Infra Foundation.
Sure.
And right now there's some real tailwinds for OpenStack driven by all of these massive infrastructure investments. There are kind of two sub-trends in that. One is digital sovereignty, which was a big theme for the event in Europe. There's a desire to really know where your data is, who has access to it, what laws apply to it, and make sure that you, as you're building systems, they're resilient to changes in the geopolitical environment. So digital sovereignty is leading a lot of folks to kind of think about where the servers live and who's running them. And that's led to a lot of investment in Europe that has mostly been built out on OpenStack. AI is another piece of it. And one of our other really popular projects is called Kata Containers. Kata Containers is a secure execution environment. You can plug it into a Kubernetes pod, and it gives you a very lightweight virtualization wrapper that protects against container breakouts and those kinds of things. But it also has some other really interesting features that make it nice for AI, which is that you get to have a kernel in there.
Right.
And that kernel can have customizations for special workloads. So we have a number of AI companies who are using Kata containers to create GPU as a service businesses. Some of them at quite large scale, and so the Open Infra Foundation is often one level down from where we are here at KubeCon. KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. A lot of the tools here expect that you have a cloud, that you have infrastructure with an API on it. In the Open Infra land, we're building infrastructure APIs on top of hardware. So it's kind of one level lower, but still I love data centers and I love that level. So I love being able to kind of span both groups.
Has there ever been a more interesting time to love data centers? Oh God.
I know.
But you do me a favor, how do you spell Kata?
K-A-T-A, yeah,
Just wanted to
K-A-T-A.
make sure people got that.
Thanks.
It's interesting. There are, you talk about tailwinds that are moving it. Let's talk about, if you don't mind, we'll spend a little time.
Yeah.
Look, the whole VMware Broadcom licensing thing has caused, I'm not here to debate whether it's worth the money, but it's caused people at least to say, hey, this is a good inflection time. Should we look at something else?
Yeah.
Should we look at going to public cloud? Should we look at a different cloud solution, hypervisor solution in general, right? Should we go hybrid, multi, stay just in the private data center? It's certainly, it's an agent of change, or at least an agent of a time to reflect and make some choices going forward.
We did a survey of our Open Infra Foundation members earlier this year, and over 80% of them had gotten inquiries about migrating from VMware. Over 60% of them had already done a migration.
Really?
Yeah.
Off of VMware?
Off of VMware, yeah, over the course of this year. And so I think what it did is it injected enough uncertainty that, as you said, you're willing to consider a change. And from a business point of view, I don't necessarily think VMware made a bad business decision. Like they're focusing on profitability and
he's done pretty well for himself, that guy.
But it does change the dynamic of where their customers have been historically and where they would be in the future. So yeah, it made people consider, should I move to something else? And what would that be?
I agree with you. And it may very well be that their decision was they're better off with 50 or 60% of their existing customer base paying 3x the time. Yeah. They make more money and it's a very focused customer base.
Yeah.
Be that as it may, it makes opportunities for a lot of people in different things.
Yeah.
The other thing driving it, of course, as you mentioned, AI.
Yeah.
Right? And what does the AI stack of the future look like? And what platform is it running? And what cloud or what have you? I think the jury may still be out, but it's certainly, anytime you can get people to say, hey, wait a second, change is coming and I got to think about what I want to do. It's a good thing, I think, for the Open Infra Foundation and the tools and projects in there.
Yeah, we have several GPU cloud providers that are running OpenStack to power that. Some of them use Kata, as I mentioned. One of them is a top 10 buyer of NVIDIA GPUs. So it's great because if you're talking about a handful of GPUs and a couple of systems, then you may just go with a simpler set of tools to manage that and deploy the workloads and go with a simpler option. But if you're talking about putting tens of thousands or 100,000 GPUs in a data center with all of the associated infrastructure around that, then you really have to have something that's very focused on the compute, storage, networking management. And I think that's where OpenStack has done really well this year.
I agree with you. I you know what? Look, over the years, OpenStack's had its ups and its downs. I really thought, I guess when you changed to Open Infra, was that 2022?
It's 2020, yeah.
It was a bit of it was a good shot of adrenaline in the arm, right? That reinvigorated it.
Yeah.
And look, well, I think its better days, maybe its best days may be
Yeah.
still ahead of it.
We just crossed 55 million cores of
Really?
compute in our user survey that we just wrapped up around the summit. So
That's a lot. It's
a lot
crazy.
more OpenStack than ever before.
Absolutely. And it's a good thing. Look, choice is good out there. Freedom is good out
Yeah.
there. Let's pivot over to KubeCon, CNCF. So this is your first KubeCon as ED here. Impressions, thoughts?
I've been coming to KubeCon mostly since the beginning. I've been to most of them, and it's always a really interesting event because this is where the industry comes, and it's a good way to sort of test the waters and see how people are feeling. And we're here in the sponsor hall. We sold out our sponsorships this year, and when you look around, you'll see a lot of backdrops with AI on them, and that's different than even 6 months ago. And I think this is what's on everybody's mind. And to me, there's what I've been trying to have a conversation around is which part of AI is the part that fits here. Because AI is so big, it's everything from really, really deep AI science and machine learning,
the neural net part
up
of it.
to chatbots and agents and this kind of thing. Which part in that entire spectrum is the right part for our community to work on? And my feeling, I'm obsessed with inference right now because I feel like that is an area of AI that's really getting overlooked. We kind of have skipped from being interested in these deep learning and machine learning and LLM creation techniques all the way over to agents. And agents require models require inference. Agents are going to operate at a much, much higher transaction rate than humans do when we interact with models. So now we have to expand that inference by even more multiples. And this is going to just increase the already extreme demand for AI systems and data centers
that we probably can't meet in the time frame they're talking about.
But this is where the software is really important because you're right. Like you were talking about power earlier and data centers, and we can't build nuclear power plants more rapidly, and we can't install servers more rapidly past a certain point. But software can change very quickly. And if you look at the core pieces within AI inference stacks, we've seen incredible efficiency improvements this year. 6x in VLLM, 8x with using caching techniques on top of Kubernetes routing primitives. And so you get a few of those advances, and you are 50 to 100 times more efficient just through software. And that means that that nuclear power plant, it's 50x more efficient there as well.
Absolutely, if we get it approved. Sorry, right?
Yes.
But what you hit on here is again, this is a very normal fact pattern, right? First, these things come out, and and it's wow, they're great. But now you start thinking, well, how much power does it use? How much water do I need to cool it? What all of these things, and efficiencies become the rule of the day.
Yeah.
And software is always about making it more efficient, right? That's how we've always proceeded all through my time in tech.
Yeah.
Right. Software is where we pick up those efficiencies. I don't. You talk about inference, and I don't think inference has had its day in the sun yet is the problem.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think we've been so focused on training these models. And yes, training the models is intensive energy, intensive resources. But eventually, we don't have enough data to train much more of these models, right? We got to have synthetic data and all those things. But now, especially with agentic AI, I think inference is where the action is going to be in the next, I'm ashamed to say, I don't even want to say 3 years, 18 months.
18
if
months
I can
is
do
what-
18
yeah.
months is plenty.
That's actually that's the time frame I think we have to to capture the opportunity right now.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is if you look at all of the largest inference systems out there, which most people don't know that these even exist, but we had OpenAI give a keynote yesterday, and they were talking about their Fluent bit usage and how they were hitting performance limits. They fixed, they made some small patches to a few lines of this.
It made a huge difference.
50% reduction.
We spoke about it on Techstrong Gang, I think yesterday.
So this is an example of where the pattern that they have is different because of the amount of data and the amount of transactions. It's a little bit different than what a happy path Kubernetes application was 2 or 3 years ago. And so this is what we need is we need these systems to be testing the new limits that we're going to find. But if you look at all of the largest inference systems, they're all running on Kubernetes right now. I think the area that's a little weak that we need to focus on over the next 18 months is that most of them are doing it in slightly different ways. So we're not truly benefiting from the full power of an open source community here. And the thing that I love about it is when I talk to a lot of these companies who are doing inference systems right now, they all go, "What's everybody else doing?" And they say, "This is not differentiating. Like, I don't believe that my inference system is differentiating for my business. My data is differentiating."
But
the
isn't
agents
that
I
always
create,
what the data is what's important?
the data, the agents, like that's going to be
I agree.
differentiating. This is holding me back. How do we get people working on it? So I think this is really the 18-month opportunity is to get some real patterns and real reference architectures for this.
But I think this fits so perfectly in the open source model, right?
Yeah.
Because where we are now is a bit of a Cambrian explosion. We have all kinds of weird animals out here, 6 eyes, 12 legs, but eventually life finds a way, right? And that efficiency kind of sets in.
Yeah.
And the best model will the cream rises to the top, and the other stuff sinks to the bottom.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have that. I hope it happens in 18 months. Sometimes these things have a way of stretching out because anti-open source money becomes involved, and a particular company with a lot of money pushes a particular model, which may not be the most efficient or best.
Yes.
We don't use OS2 today, right?
Right.
And I love OS2. But in any event, I do think that's where we are with inference, and I think it's going to reignite. You think there's a lot of AI now? Wait,
Right.
When this inference stuff is real and we've got that working right, bar the, what is the term? Katie bar the doors or whatever.
Yeah, Katie bar the door.
I didn't say that much in New York growing up, but you know what I mean. I do think it's there. From the CNCF point of view, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got all these projects, and they're all being touched by this one way or the other.
Right.
How do you orchestrate? It's a bad word to use. How do you orchestrate all of these AI needs and push and pulls going on here?
Yeah, well, we announced an AI conformance for Kubernetes this week, and I think that's kind of step one is to give people like a very baseline target to start aiming at. It's definitely not the end. There's a lot more to do, but what it does is it gives people a baseline target to start aiming at. And the other thing that I spoke about this in my keynote. We need to highlight it because when I do that, I walk through the conference the rest of the week, and everybody's coming up to me and they're saying, "Okay, well, I'm using Ray on Kubernetes. I'm using Kserve. I'm using Kubeflow. I'm using but I run into this problem, or I did this thing and I was able to do this pre-fill caching, and it like totally changed our Gen AI efficiency."
Mm-hmm.
And so I write them all down and I start to connect them, and this is how it works in open source. And when we get to Amsterdam, I think we'll see progress
within 3-4 months.
Yeah, I think we'll see some progress, and that it can move very rapidly once you can.
I think once there's consensus.
Yeah, once you can get people together, it can move.
And I think that's what you're really saying. Look, hopefully by Amsterdam, we're going to have a consensus here, and then it's full speed ahead.
Yeah.
Right. We get rid of the 12 eyes, 8 leg creatures that make no sense.
Yeah.
And go forward. I do think that's it. But you got to remember, to me, open source is like democracy. Right, it's the most least inefficient form of government.
Yeah.
But the best that there is.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you gotta let this play out.
Yeah. for
Let
sure.
the community and the market decide what is the best thing, right? You can't
Yeah.
we can't dictate and
The
let it
thing that,
happen.
the thing that I see as a change in AI right now is I say that ChatGPT was a proof of concept. You know, that it was not actually the end goal for AI. ChatGPT was a proof of concept, but we put a human voice on top of AI, and it made us all go nuts. You know.
Yeah. No, it's sexy. Like,
Yeah,
because it had that order magical that even, look, you and I, we've been in this game, but you show it to like my wife's family.
Yeah, I
They
know.
think it's magic.
I know the computer is
Yeah, all of
has
a sudden
brain
it became
talking,
real,
yeah.
right? It became real.
And so I think it's actually distracted from some of the fundamental progress in other areas, and we're starting to see a resurgence of small models, of
Yes.
specialized intelligence, and those are the things that are going to drive inference on the edge, inference inside of enterprises, all kinds.
Do you think we'll see those as open source projects, or do you think the amount of money is just so you can't even? It's like talking about light years in space, right?
Yeah.
You can't wrap your head around.
Yeah, I
Does
mean,
that take away from the open source?
so Akamai just announced an inference edge platform. I think maybe last week, and it's built on Kubernetes, and
Is it?
it's in our AI conformance program.
Beautiful.
So I think that we will see services for sure that are monetizing the open source,
As they should.
but I think we'll see a lot of this in open source.
I love it. Thank you for coming on here.
Yeah.
We're overtime. I apologize.
Yeah.
Hey, that might have been our highlight for KubeCon this year in Atlanta. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Ingram Micro ONE, and we're talking about AI and innovation with my good buddy Eric. How you doing, buddy?
Nice to meet you, Mike.
All right, welcome to the show. I guess a lot of folks are talking about AI. It was almost like ubiquitous here in terms of conversation, but we're still barely scratching the surface. So where do you see kind of like the potential and the immediate opportunity for partners?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and that's always where we see the start, right? It's this, I think in the US you say drink your own champagne. There are also other ways to say this. I prefer the champagne one. Now what we're seeing in the partner base is twofold adoption. You see adoption of, you could say, the standardized, the productivity-related AI projects that are generative in nature, right? So that's your meeting assistants. It's also customer service related, a lot of that. So you see that internal adoption because all of them are resource constrained. Like there are very few partners here that are like, hey, we have more people than we know what to do with. Usually not the case, especially not in currently a market where the IT adoption and the speed of change is so fast that you can barely capture all the opportunity that's there, right? So it's a good problem to have. I'm not saying there aren't tough environments, but that's a good opportunity or a good problem to have. So how are they dealing with it? One, they're quickly adopting some of those kind of almost off-the-shelf AI solutions to focus on efficiency and productivity. That's stream one. That's straightforward. It is basically the fastest way for them to create AI fluency for every employee of an MSP of a VAR of SI, right? Because if you use it daily, you create fluency. But then the real projects that they're doing and that they're drinking their own champagne internally are the first places where they're going into business processes and they're going agentic essentially and saying, okay, what's the first type of process where we have, and I use the word, I call it non-human value add, which might be a bit contentious, but what I mean with that is you have a process that requires action taking that isn't always deterministic, but the result of it is right or wrong. Once it's right, there is no quality to it. Once you've done it right, it can't be good or better, it's just right. That's the starting point, and that's where we're seeing lots of partners focus and say, okay, what do we have? It's not about replacing humans, that we can essentially introduce agentic because we want to get to the point where we're not just talking about generative AI, we're talking about AI that's taking action to give the customer superpower. So that's the adoption we're seeing. What we're not seeing so much at scale are like the model fine tuning, deep kind of model training. We have partners that do this, but that's not the broad spectrum because it's a long way to scale ROI if you're a smaller partner, and a big investment to do this. And ultimately, you have many other places that will get you an outcome and fluency much more quickly and at scale.
How do I navigate this challenge? A lot of the business processes are to use what the AI folks will call deterministic, right? They're supposed to be done the same way every time. AI is probabilistic and rarely does the same thing the same way twice. How do I kind of meld those two things together to get to something interesting?
I think there are again two ways in which to control this. One is you got to have someone that controls model drifting in the broadest sense, right? The difference in the deterministic programming, which is input A, output B, that we've created those decision trees, right? Even in customer service and support, when you were talking to bots, that's essentially a very large decision tree. You're going to a place where, depending on, let's take Gen AI as an example, and like a service bot or something that's answering questions, helping with decisions, it's not just that it's deterministic, it's also learning through reinforcement. So if it starts getting asked questions that weren't the initial expected ones, its answers over time will also start changing. So a simpler way to think of this is, like I always say, like I send my kid to school. My kid has like his circle of friends, his class, and I kind of know the behavior. Right? It's not going to be perfectly deterministic, but I know who he's around, what they talk about, what they like doing. Now imagine all of a sudden, his behavior starts changing. Probably something in the environment changed. Been exposed to a new group of friends, whatever that is. They're having different conversations. They're doing different things. Behavior changes. Without anthropomorphizing, and that's the same thing happening with those more probabilistic and drifting AI models. So step one is make sure that you have someone looking that is kind of regrounding, less about hallucination, right? But regrounding that. Point two in this, and that's actually, I think, a trend that isn't just solving an immediate challenge, but that will be around in the long run, is human in the loop, right? That's the straight up answer, right? You want to ensure that you have a human in the loop, not so much to say this is right or wrong, but really to ensure consistent improvement of quality of what those systems are doing. And yeah, on the off chance, also making sure that doesn't go off the deep end, basically. So human in the loop will be around for a long time.
I think a lot of partners are looking for something easy to get started with.
Yeah.
And you've seen some use cases out there that might be easier to replicate than others. So, what's your best advice to partners about, here's something you can go do on a dime and it'll work out well,
Yeah.
and you'll get that muscle memory you're talking about.
No, absolutely. So because we encounter this a lot at Ingram, we've created basically a program to help those partners confidently sell, deploy, and service AI solutions at scale, and ideally in a repeatable way. We call it Xvantage Enable AI, and it is what our partners can go and seek on the Xvantage platform. It is aided by all our local expert teams, so they are being hand-held. Why, right? The starting point is you need to understand, as an MSP, as an SI, as a VAR, where do I stand today relative to AI? Even if you've already built an AI practice, which in our experience has been, there's always a gap because it's changing so fast. So what's my business understanding, my technical understanding, what's my service capability that I have? And not to forget, almost the most important things, what is the current ask/need of my customers? So example, I'm an MSSP, but all my partners, all my customers are talking about is using AI for productivity, right? So I have a choice. Pivot and start also doing productivity related technology business. Hard force the security conversation into the productivity conversation, which is valid, you should consider it, but it's going to prolong any implementation, and that dime will turn into multiples very quickly. Or wait until the first thing is implemented, something relative to productivity, and then fast follow, okay? So once that's done, the key thing is repeatable use cases focused on business outcome, on select industries, because that's a language that every partner today speaks. Without an AI training can open up the opportunities. So what we decided to say, we focus on only 3 business outcomes, which is yes, right now it's for AI, but it's the same for any tech. Either you're deploying it as an end customer to be more productive, more with less, more faster, any of these permutations, productivity, or to create a better experience for your customers, for your employees, for your suppliers, doesn't matter, or that. Or you're deploying a technology product to shore up security or governance. Those are kind of the three only outcomes that are relevant. The reason that's important here, you talked about on a dime, because in the first scenario, productivity, I can turn around a business case in probably 3 minutes. Experience is going to be a little bit harder. We've all experienced that, right? Security is not hard, but it is cost avoided versus, immediate benefit created. Now, once you have this and you map this to an industry, and we do focus on manufacturing, retail, healthcare, finance, and now also public sector, you have the kind of trifecta of, I'm trying to solve a productivity-focused business problem for somebody in retail using technology from OEM X, not to mention them here today. Then you have a very clear path of what you need to do. And what we're seeing there today is that all the initial lift, as boring as it might sound, are quick productivity-based wins in a very simple way. If you're using something like a Copilot, like I'm really taking that example, let's say you pay, I'm going to use an arbitrary number, $20 for a seat a month, okay? The first time you've saved yourself an hour of work, which will probably happen on the first day of usage, you're going to think of that as that ROI, because an hour is probably going to cost you more than $20. So that is very easy, but the crux is not just sell it. It's making sure that people know how to use it, no different to past technologies, and adopt it, because that creates that tidal wave to move deeper into process and agentic, etc. So as kind of standard as it sounds, it's creating those 80% of time, 20% of value projects first, productivity, to then go into 20% of knowledge worker time, 80% of value projects next.
Ingram is clearly invested heavily in AI. How does the knowledge transfer between you and the partners occur? Because it's not just enough to have something I can go and download and install. I kind of have to know something about this. So how do you guys take all the intellectual capital that you guys have created and kind of share that with the partners?
Great question. So I'd say in 2, maybe 3 ways. One is my team's focused on internal Ingram AI fluency that's not technology specific, to ensure that over time, every single person that works at Ingram Micro can help the partners understand and navigate basically what's happening with AI. Not down to the technical level unless you have that role, right? That's the first piece, because that's how it scales, right? We have over 20,000 associates in over 50 countries that are engaging these 160,000 plus partners. And that is the way in which they thoroughly can transfer that knowledge. That's the first one. The second one is, I spoke about Xvantage Enable AI. So that's actually the digital platform where they can find the assessment and their knowledge, the use cases, and then the repeatable, we call them growth tracks, where they can build a practice. However, that's digital. The way we do this is in every country, our local organization adds to it their local engagement. So they'll say, based on who the partner is, the business they're doing with us, and the commitment they have to taking this AI transformation serious, we're going to add these workshop components, these certification components, which are human interlock, right? So human in the loop, if you will. So we're doing the same thing. At a local level, this program is all the automation, scalability, and self-service side of it, make it really easy to use. And then the depth of knowledge comes through the transfer of our teams locally being involved, from the business, technical, all the way to the service side.
Okay. Last question. So what's your best advice to the partners? What should they be focused on right now?
I think in English you say get stuck in, right? I would say engage with us right now. Come to Enable AI and talk to your Ingram counterpart to it. Understand, where you are today, if you don't have a strategy. Understand where you are today and where your partners, your customers want you to be and what they want from you. And on that basis, build a roadmap that is very concrete, outcome focused, and not about the hype side of the technology, but basically understand where you are, build a custom roadmap. And again, the advice is no different than on any other technology. Focus is what will make you win. If you really understand your customer, that could be their vertical, the geo they operate in, the cultural context they operate in, and then also are able to map the technology to that scenario, you will win. If you just have a great relationship, go golfing, go playing tennis, whatever that might means, your relevance will wane very quickly. That's been said for a long time, but with technology taking on really more and more proactive pieces, that is what's going to happen. So I'd say get stuck in right now. If you treat it as hype or treat it as a bubble, you will not be around, because nothing has ever moved as fast as this trend.
Hey, buddy, thanks for coming
It was
by.
an absolute pleasure.
As
Thank
they
you.
say, context is everything.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap for this year's Ingram Micro conference from us. And thank you all for watching all these episodes. And it's been a great time on our behalf. And I want to thank Ingram Micro for having us. And hopefully we'll see you all next year.
Hey everyone, we're back here live on the floor of KubeCon. And it's Wednesday, and I'm going to guess it's about 2 o'clock, right? And we've had an amazing day and a half so far of some great conversations. You probably see behind us people moving in and out. The show floor, as I think I mentioned, is really big this year. Like KubeCon style, not too much on top of each other, but a little bit more concentrated than, like, let's say during COVID when stuff was really spread out. I want to introduce you to our next guest. His name is Sudeep Goswami. Did I get that right? Goswami. Sudeep is the CEO of a company called Traefik Labs, but it's spelled a little funny. We're going to get into it. But first, let's find out more about Sudeep. Welcome. How are you, man?
Yeah. Hi, Alan. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So Sudeep, before we talk about Traefik Labs and KubeCon and all this, let's talk a little bit about you. As I said, you're the CEO here, but you weren't born the CEO at Traefik. Give us a little bit of your journey.
Yeah. So engineer by trade, used to implement technology before I got on the other side and started to build technology and then sell technology. So really kind of dealt with the challenges of day two ops and what users have to do after they buy a certain piece of technology, and all the trials and tribulations they have to go through and being able to implement that at scale.
Yep. So I'm going to assume that, being that you said that Traefik deals with sort of a day two ops problem, is that what you would think?
Yes, we definitely focus on day two ops for microservices and cloud native infrastructure in general.
Got it. Let's talk about how you went from being how you came to be the CEO at Traefik Labs, right? There's a lot of people out there, of course, who aspire to be CEOs. And having been a CEO now a few times, I don't. But when did you, let's say, take the track and say, you know what, I want to be the CEO?
Well, I'm a problem solver at heart.
Uh-huh.
So for me, it's all about solving problems, whether it's a technical problem or a business problem. So I joined the company as a CRO.
Okay.
And then we had a conversation internally and tried to match my skill sets to what the company needed and the problems that needed to be solved. And, the rest is...
history, as they say.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about the history of Traefik, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Again, probably a Traefik Labs company that maybe a lot of our folks haven't heard of. As I mentioned, it's spelled a little different. Why don't we start there? How do you spell it?
Yeah, Traefik spelled Traefik. The URL is traefik.io. And the Traefik's claim to fame, it's really around the open source project. When Traefik started almost 10 years ago now, where our founder and now the CTO put out, basically, he's a problem solver as well, He found a problem deploying microservices, found it very painful, so he came up with his own solution, put it out there on GitHub, and overnight it just took off.
So is the open source project called Traefik as well?
Yes, that is called Traefik. Or Traefik, some people know it as Traefik Proxy.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Traefik Proxy.
Traefik Proxy,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that was in 2016. Now the project has over 3.4 billion with a B downloads.
Wow.
It's got over almost 60,000 GitHub stars. Got a very vibrant community of active contributors. both inside and outside the company.
I love it.
It's one of the best projects, and people who come to our booth here, they know the brand. The brand is the Gopher. That's the brand,
The mascot, if
character,
you will.
the
Yeah,
mascot. Exactly. So people are always coming to our booth for the Gopher
Gopher.
shirts.
got it. It's funny. I'm old enough to remember when Gopher meant something else in the internet. Right before there was a web, we had wide area search, Gopher, and stuff like that.
That's right.
Remember?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just wanted from like a book of housekeeping. Is Traefik a CNCF project or no? Just Traefik
Traefik
Labs?
is not a CNCF project. It is an open source project, and it's got an open core model. And then so it has the open source binary itself, and then there's a secondary binary for all the enterprise features. So we built on top of the open source as the foundation.
Got it. And that the open core model is one, of course, that's very familiar to everyone here in the open source community, right? It's evolved. So with open source, I'm assuming you have like freemium modules or premium modules that ride on top of the open core open source one that give you enhanced capabilities. Let's talk about what comes in the pure open source one, and then what some of the add-on modules are and what they do.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about what comes in the add-on modules, but also want to talk about the upgrade process because we made that extremely user-friendly and seamless. So let's start with the capabilities. In the open source, people can deploy that as a reverse proxy, as a load balancer, and as a router. It auto-discovers all of the microservices that you're running, so you don't have to do that manual work.
Wow.
And that's the core value proposition of the open source that people love.
That's just, yeah.
They don't have to deal with kind of finding a microservice by microservice. It automatically does that, creates the routes, so traffic starts flowing to it. Okay, that's the foundation.
And that's in the open source.
That's in the open source. People love that, and a lot of people, for them, that is enough. And then we can give them enterprise support on top of that, so they have the peace of mind for when they do need to call us and get support.
Got it.
Now moving to the paid add-ons.
Premium.
All the additional things which comes with our advanced another binary, so to speak. People use that. One of the most common use cases for that is security from an authentication and authorization standpoint. So when their microservices need that front door where you can authenticate and authorize users and traffic coming in, that's when you need what's called an API gateway.
Okay.
And that is the most common use case for our paid offering. What we have done is built on top of that, and that API gateway.
So when you say it's an API gateway, it's a API built or that rides on top of the open source core that allows other people to plug in.
Correct.
Okay.
So we have our own API gateway, but there are plugins available on the open source binary that communities can contribute to. So you can pull off of that, and you can add functionality, or you would go with our paid offering that we have written at Traefik Labs and we support. So, and that's the most natural path people take.
Got it.
Is the API gateway, and then we have created extensions of that API gateway into developing an AI gateway and an MCP
would that be
gateway.
sort of an MCP? Okay, so that's an MCP gateway.
Yeah, an AI gateway is separate and an MCP gateway is separate.
Really?
Now they have
so
different.
is the AI like A2A? Was A2A or
The
something
AI?
different?
Think of the AI gateway as LLM router.
Okay.
So it does many more things. So at its core, it's routing to different LLM endpoints. While and before it's routing, we also provide a way to enrich the traffic or to guardrail the traffic. So not every query that you send to an LLM should be sent there. Maybe your corporate policies don't allow certain types of content.
Got it.
So we integrated with NVIDIA's safety name guardrails. So before you route the traffic to an LLM, you take it through a set of safety guardrails. Then comes some kind of caching layer. So if you keep asking the same question over and over again, you don't need to consume these expensive tokens. So only then do you route. All of that
Right.
is offered as part of the AI gateway.
Got it.
MCP gateway is, it requires that as the foundation, but it's not enough. MCP gateway needs more than that because it's a new protocol.
Right.
And what that requires is for your agents to be able to talk to the MCP resources. And then the MCP gateway provides that governance layer. So it allows which tools under the MCP umbrella can you talk to? How do you talk to those tools? What operations can you do under those tools? So it's an extra layer of complexity that needs to be governed properly, that the API gateway definitely is not going to give you out of the box. An AI gateway is not enough. So you need essentially what we call the triple gate pattern for MCP. You need the AI conversations protected, you need the API conversations protected, and you need the MCP conversations protected.
And all three of those are premium, and I could.
And all these are premium.
Give us an example of some of the other premium models.
The other premium,
modules.
yeah, and which is really around API lifecycle management. As everything is becoming an API, so your LLM endpoints are being exposed as APIs. Even your MCP endpoints become exposed as APIs. You have an API management problem, or you have an API proliferation problem. So what you need is a full lifecycle management of that. That means your APIs need to be versioned, controlled, they need to be sunsetted, they need to be deprecated. You need to provide rate limits and quotas. So, there's a layer of defense.
This is why you have a true sort of gateway that controls all of that,
Right.
rather than just, an API to API. So, just
Correct.
A direct connection, if you will.
Plus, you also need to share those APIs with your community of developers. They could be internal, they could be external. So this is where a developer portal is needed. So all those things come under the umbrella of API lifecycle management.
Got it.
Now, the beauty of this, going from open source to all these extra paid capabilities, it takes 30 seconds to do the upgrade. And it's an in-place upgrade that you would do. It preserves all the configuration that you do with the open source. And after 30 seconds, you
Builds
have
it
a
on
new
top
thing,
of that.
and you have
It's
get
almost
exposed
like
to all
a
of these.
mesh layer that sits on top of the pure open stack, if you will. I'm wondering, so it's not like, so people host this and run this themselves. It's not, because that's another model, right, in open source, where I'll take my open source and I'll run it as a SaaS, so you don't have to worry about it. We will.
We provide a self-hosted model.
The self-hosted.
So people usually deploy this on public cloud. So because we're Kubernetes native, they can deploy it on any of the public Kubernetes distros. So AKS, EKS, GKE, OKE,
Got it.
LKE. But they can also deploy this on-prem in a completely air-gapped and offline environment.
Okay, so it doesn't even need connectivity
No,
at
it
that
does
point.
not. And people can deploy it at the edge. We are natively integrated into K3S with Rancher. They can deploy this in a bigger environment. You name it, like it works seamlessly everywhere.
Excellent. And so does it require, it requires kube though?
The Kubernetes native, that if you're deploying it in Kubernetes, yes, it's going to require Kubernetes. But because we started in 2016 when
Before the
Kubernetes was
kube.
not even around, we have had native integration with many different alternative ways of deploying microservices, starting with just bare metal Linux.
Okay.
And then came HashiCorp Nomad.
Yep.
We can be deployed just as a Docker container, or we could be deployed in Kubernetes.
Okay. Got it.
And we can even be deployed in Windows, if you like.
Listen to that. Oh, you're the first one to mention any deployment of Windows.
People don't talk
today.
about their W.
No, they don't. It's the year of the Linux desktop. But anyway, did we mention the website?
We did. Traefik.io.
Say it again for me.
Traefik.io.
.io. And look, I would imagine you could go to GitHub or any other board, Traefik.io, and download the open source
Yes.
package and install it
Yeah,
yourself.
it's on GitHub. You can
Yeah.
download it through a Helm chart. There are
Very
many
cool.
ways to install it.
Absolutely. And then once you're up and running, putting in the premium modules, as you said, the 30-second exercise.
It's a Helm chart update, takes 30 seconds, and you're good to go.
Excellent. I can't. Well, let me ask you, what has the show been for you this year?
It's great. It's great. We announced actually some great stuff this
what did
week.
you announce?
So there's a, with everything we just discussed, there is a fragmentation problem happening now in the industry. It's a big realization people are having that virtual machines are not going away.
No.
So there's going to be a coexistence of virtual machines and containers, and now serverless workloads as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but they're not mutually exclusive.
They're not mutually exclusive, but the way people manage them are very independently and differently managed. So the way you manage a VM stack and the way you expose your services running inside a VM is very different than the way you expose and manage a Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So what we have launched is a unified layer, which we call the application layer intelligence, that connects the VM environment and the Kubernetes environment and also the serverless environment. We launched support for
manage all three.
So you can manage all three in a very cohesive way. And it's through a single application layer, which is a layer 7 construct.
Mm-hmm.
And you can seamlessly redirect traffic, because what's happening is, as monoliths are being decomposed into microservices, your backend might be sitting in a VM, but your front end is going into Kubernetes.
Absolutely.
Right? But it's still the same application.
Yep.
So at the application layer, when a traffic comes in, you want to have that intelligence so you can seamlessly direct traffic. Whether it goes left or right or somewhere else.
I mean, with containers, they literally could be distributed anywhere, right? It's not just.
Right. And we did the integration with Nutanix as a reference architecture.
Oh, very
because
cool.
Nutanix as a platform does a great job of providing a virtualized environment and the Kubernetes environment. So they have their AHV with flow networking for virtual machines. We have done the integration with them. And what that allows users to do is to auto-discover all the virtual machines that are running. So then they can write policies against it. We are already working with them in their Kubernetes distro, and we can auto-discover services running there. And now with Knative, with serverless, they are the perfect reference architecture for this solution.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Any other announcements here?
Just that we, on the Gateway API, which is on everybody's mind here, we continue to lead support on that. We provide same-day support for the latest version 1.4. Our founder and CTO and other team members, they're part of the community, actively working with the Gateway API community and advancing it forward. So, that's one of the other big announcements, that we continue to, open source is important for us, it's very strategic for us, and we continue to invest in that.
I love it. All right. I think we're about out of time here. I think we hit most everything. Is there anything we left out?
No, just, you know where to find us, Traefik.io.
Very cool. Thank you very much for being
thank you,
here.
Alan.
Enjoy the rest of KubeCon. Hey, we're going to take a break. We probably have another 2 hours or more of coverage here at KubeCon today. We'll be back again tomorrow. But let's take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment. Hey everyone, we're back here live on the floor of Techstrong. We're Techstrong, but we're back here live on the floor of KubeCon, and you're watching Techstrong TV. It's been a long 2 days. Let me introduce you to my next guest. His name is Ido Niemann. Ido is with Firefly, and if you haven't heard of Firefly, don't worry, you're going to. But first, Ido, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So, let's talk about you first.
All right.
Give us the Ido Niemann story.
So I feel at home on the Techstrong floor within the bigger KubeCon Atlanta.
This little gray area right here.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel at home because generally I'm a nerd. Grew up around computers. Served 12 years in the Israeli cyber intelligence.
8200 or?
Something a little bit better, 81.
Oh, 81, okay.
Yeah. The less digits you get, the better it is.
Okay.
So then I led technology for a prominent Israeli hedge fund.
Okay.
Then I had a startup in the serverless field, and for the past 4+ years, I'm building Fireflies together with my partner and great team.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know, look, for those of us in the industry, not for nothing, but that's a pretty typical Israeli entrepreneur story, right? I meet a lot of them. For people not in tech, they're like, wow, but this is of course why Israel's a startup country and these kinds of things. It's what you do there. I've started 4 or 5 companies myself over the years, venture, and I've interviewed hundreds of co-founders and entrepreneurs. No one starts a company lightly, right? Everyone, you put your guts into it, right? And then your passion. Talk to us about what was your passion in doing Firefly?
So back in my army days, we obviously did some very complex technology building, but the scale, it's a nationwide scale.
Right.
We did some very large cyber activities, let's put it this way. So always fascinated by doing large things at scale with efficiency. And back then, we were looking at the outside internet and seeing all the tools and wealth of possibilities. And because we are, air-gapped, we need to build everything ourselves to be military grade, we can only build those. So I remember seeing stuff like infrastructure as code coming to life, wanting it, but need to build our own scripts and internal tools to do it. So, when I got out after a good run, I started coming to shows like this, and this got me pumped about the possibilities, but also to start thinking about how we harness all of this, because it is quite a lot. You said the long 2 days, and we still have at least 1 day to go.
Yes.
So many different conversations, vendors, technologies, 500 talks outside.
Yes.
So imagine that you come to KubeCon and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be cutting edge. I'm going to learn everything. You just can't.
You can't anymore.
Right?
There was a time when you could, right? Maybe the first one in San Francisco.
2018, yeah.
Yeah, not even 20, by 2018, that was already, I think, Seattle. It was big. 2016, 2017, maybe. But yeah, now it's 200 projects in CNCF alone.
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap around.
So when you say passion is about, hey, let's build the best technology, let's make it scalable and accessible and simple, but also let's allow the end users to actually adopt what's happening here. Because everyone wants to create the new shiny CNCF incubation project. Everyone wants to be, hey, I got the next 10,000 stars and everyone loves me and I'm great, right? Everyone, but at the end, we want people to use our technology.
Right.
We want the end customers of the end customers to gain value out of it. So at some point I said, hey, I think this is both interesting, hard, and might be useful to the world.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, if I had to ask you, define Firefly's mission. You talked a little bit about your passion and how it relates to that, but crystallize it. And you go, look, this camera's on you. Give them Firefly's mission, its reason for being.
Our mission is to make cloud simple, managed, and controlled. So Firefly is an agentic cloud automation platform. Basically, we help you understand everything that runs in your cloud, because as mentioned, 200 projects, 500 vendors, so many practitioners. How do you even know what you have in the cloud? We just saw it 3 weeks ago. We're now talking in November, but in late October of 2025, we saw 2 major outages by AWS and then by Azure, right? Microsoft. So now we know that everything runs on the cloud. You can say AI is the most important thing. I don't disagree, but I say AI runs on the cloud. This is why you see all those large AI companies sign deals with cloud. So cloud is the most important mission critical thing we have in our lives. For us, computer nerds, we couldn't get DoorDash to deliver a lunch, so we know something bad
Right.
happened. So important, but it's so complex, it's so expensive, it changes so fast. How do we control and automate it? We don't have one place, one system of record to see our cloud. So this is agentic cloud automation platform. We connect to everything in your cloud seamlessly, within minutes. We see everything from Oracle to AWS, GCP, Kubernetes, your Datadog, your MongoDB, everything that is cloud related, we see it in one place. Then we sweep in and we tell you over the system of record what's properly controlled and codified, what's governed, what's managed, what's looking like you want it to look like versus unmanaged or misconfigured. Once we establish this, we bring you a bunch of automations. It can be full agents, it can be AI-driven automations, it can be quote-unquote old legacy algorithm-based automations to solve your problems, from deploying to the cloud, to govern it, automating it, and up to recover from an incident like we saw 3 weeks ago.
Excellent. Good. That was good. I wanted to make sure before we forget. Firefly, the website.
Firefly.ai.
.ai.
You can't do it any other way today.
Good.
.com is for boomers.
Easy.
Except for DevOps.com.
Right, except for DevOps.com and PlatformEngineering.com. Though we do have AI and IT ones too. There you go.
You see.
Yeah, well, we like to spread it around. But let's talk. So now let's fast forward, right? We understand the problem that you're solving, a little of the history and passion. As the company exists today, right? And we live, yes, cloud's very important. Agentic AI is probably very important now, will be more important next year and the year after. Where is the company, like when you're talking to people here on the floor today, what are the conversations you're having? What are we talking about?
First, we're talking about where are the best parties post the conference, right?
Wow, that's the most important thing.
Yes, of course. The second thing, if you want to take the AI route, one thing that we've noticed, and we actually learned about it from our customers, not that we found it ourselves, is that today application software is being written by AI. Mm-hmm. Everyone uses Cursor or Copilot or Cloud Code or doesn't matter what, right? But when we talk about cloud infrastructure, it's still being run manually with ClickOps or line-by-line Terraform, OpenTofu at best. It doesn't make sense. How come all my back-end engineers and front-end engineers are writing to Cursor, hey, help me do this and that, I'm now writing application and the agents do it, but the infrastructure that powers it all is still old way. It doesn't make sense. So people are looking for ways to integrate AI into infrastructure management. We see it through our MCP server. So MCP servers allows you to use your Cursor, your Cloud Code, your GitHub Copilot in tandem with Firefly, so you just talk to your AI assistant, hey, I want to now deploy this application into AWS US East 1. What do I need to change? Goes to Firefly, see, and it solves it. So this is one thing. Moving from manual scripted cloud ops into AI and agentic cloud ops, just like software engineering moved it. This is the first thing. The second thing, as I see it, is how to incorporate agents into your day-to-day workflows. Because everyone wants it, right? After every single board meeting, you'll see the CEO coming to the CTO, which comes to the VP, which comes to the developer. We need more AI. Now, if you don't adopt AI, you're fired. If you adopt AI and you make mistakes, you're fired. Yeah. I don't like those.
Either way, you're fired.
Probabilities are bad.
Right.
But what happened? So if you remember 2 months ago, a vibe coding solution created an application, deployed it to the cloud, changed it, and then it deleted a production database.
Lied about it.
Yeah. I'm here to talk about the good stuff.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll leave you to talk about the more problematic stuff later, yeah? So it deleted it. Now everyone say, hey, we can't use the agents and vibe coding in production. It's nice for your hobby. I want my grandma's recipe application. Right, cool. But I won't let it run.
Not mission critical.
Right, my trading solution. So what do we need? Because at some point, we will need agents to do it because we don't have enough platform engineers, DevOps engineers out there, SREs to do it. We will have it. What are we lacking? We're lacking context. I need the agents or the AI-driven automation to know that this database is being used by other teams, maybe deployed on other lines of business, other continents. How do I know it? If I have this system of record for cloud, this is the first thing I know. And the second one is guardrails. So as we see it, when we talk to the market, we see AI is being treated like a very good protege or an intern. You want it to do stuff, but only to some extent. So you say, hey, AI deploy to dev account, maybe to staging, but you don't deploy to production. So you need a guardrail that says, hey, agents can deploy to staging, but when it comes to production, you must have a human in the loop, so it opens a pull request for you to do a code review for it. And so all of these types of limitations. So to wrap it up, we need to adopt AI in our infrastructure management and operations and not just for application, because usually infrastructure moves faster than application development. And the second one is have the context and the guardrails to really adopt agents into platform engineering.
I love it. So, you know, so that's what should happen, right? The world's full of what should happen. Not, you know, but that's not necessarily what happens. Now, and Firefly's mission is to make sure that happens, or to help make that happen.
Enable, yeah.
Enable it. Do you see, and one of the things I see, look, I've been in technology a long time, right? I got the dot-coms. But there's a gap between what should happen and when it happens. How big a gap is that? This vision you have of how this should work, when are we going to actually see that?
So, you know, many people ask me why we have agentic cloud automation. So the first thing is that they don't let us into KubeCon floor, Techstrong floor without agentic in your name,
If you
right?
don't got AI, you don't have,
Exactly, but because everyone is talking about it, everyone wants it, but we're still in the gearing up stage.
Right.
What I talked about, the context and the MCP, this is reality. We have many customers, I'm not talking about a handful, we have many customers who are today consuming Firefly with an MCP first mindset.
Really?
So no UI, no API, MCP first. And I'm not talking only about the cool kids from Silicon Valley running the AI shops. I'm talking about some very large enterprises,
Really?
legacy enterprises, Fortune 500s, and I love seeing it because it means that it's now, you know, it's mainstream.
Yeah.
We are at the height of it, and it's great. For the actual agents to deploy, it will take some more time because not enough context, not enough guardrails, and we can still...
And not enough trust.
Exactly.
I think that's it too. But that's interesting that you have MCP first. Because you think about it, what MCP came out about a year ago now only.
Makes sense, yeah.
December, I think, last year. And now we think about it, we talk about it like it's been here forever, but it's not even a year old. But here you are selling MCP first.
I think that, you know, you don't need to tell you how successful those big AI companies, but even the companies like Cursor and Windsurf, they're so popular. And every developer, software engineer today asks themselves, how can I get better? How can I get stronger? And if you don't do it, it's not that you're getting better. It's like inflation. Your power goes down, right? So everyone, even just to keep up,
it's just table stakes at this point.
And now the platform teams, the SRE teams, they say, hey, we are now behind because they have it right in code. But what about our infrastructure? What's the difference? Code, as a new code deployed for application, is most often new. And it's similar. Every company's, every organization's infrastructure is a snowflake. And it comes, if you're not a 5-person startup, you come with a very big baggage that you need to carry with you and understand and tap into. So this is why it was harder for them to do it. So if you allow them to run as fast as the application teams, they just embrace it. And they love it, and they come back to the CIO, hey, you told us to adopt AI, we're adopting it, see how cool is it? Hey, I'm talking to the MCP server, show me all drifts in my account, Firefly fixes it. Hey, here's a misconfiguration. Let's use AI to solve it. So Firefly finds the problem, the MCP creates the solution, then we bake it into infrastructure as code, we deploy it, people just love it. It's, the future is here. We're living in a place where everything can be quick and effective.
It is an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah.
I will say that, boomer or not. Ido.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Ido Neiman, Firefly, here on Techstrong TV, on the Techstrong TV floor, as far as the eye can see. We're going to take a break. We're back with more. Stay tuned.
My goal today is to walk you through this concept of Cloud Scouts, a new service from Southworks that we've been working on over the last year or so. And the idea is to formally introduce it today to you for the first time, right? So I will start with some history, like in the beginning there was nothing and so on. But when we started writing code in the early days, debugging and logging and all those practices fall into the developer, right? Like as a developer, you were the one responsible for maintaining the software that you built. And the idea was that, you needed better telemetry, better things for you to debug the code that you have written. Over time, we came to this concept of SRE. Books has been written about it, a lot of products and things happen, and it became its own practice, right? We have a lot of tools, a lot of data collection points, a lot of services, and a lot of things that create this as a standalone discipline. So we have this team that it's now responsible for creating alerts and monitoring how applications are doing and informing the rest of the organization why do we have a downtime and get somebody to fix it. But with this evolution and all this tooling and all this data that we have nowadays, it became its own silo, right? Like a silo in which people would look at the metrics, would look at their own dashboards, and then something happens and the ticket battle begins. What do we mean by this? It's basically you get an alert. That alert is something is broken. You look at the elevated error rate. You say but all services show healthy and probably it's a development thing. So I will open up a ticket, send it somewhere, somebody will prioritize it, and hopefully it will get resolved by somebody that knows what's going on. It's not, the containers, it's not the cluster, it's not the network, it's something within the app. So the famous, it's a bug, it's a feature, whatever. And this, whatever is running inside the infrastructure, it's a black box. It's, I just, take care of containers. And I found myself saying that many times where I was like, whatever you are running, as long as it's on a container, we can make it scale, we can deploy it everywhere, we can build those things. But then there is a reality, right? Then there is why the app is not working, why the system is not responding, why are we getting an elevated error rate? And our conclusion, right, was that it isn't one or the other. It's not like, let's take back everything that developers used to do out of SRE and bring it back. But to come up with this concept of somebody that knows both how the app is built, what's the goal, what's the business, and try to close the gap between that context so we are not exchanging tickets. We created this concept of Cloud Scouts that it's heavily inspired in the latest and greatest trend, even though Palantir has been doing it for a couple of years now, and OpenAI, of the forward deployed engineer, right? The idea is that we have somebody from our team that joins our customers and works the way we used to work with our customers, embedded on their teams, looking at the problems and trying to close the gap by being fluent in both the product Like what is that we are building, what are the business requirements and why things are built the way they are, and the platform. Like we are running Kubernetes, we are using containers, we are syndicating logs here, there, these are the alerts and how the way it works. The idea is that this Cloud Scout, it's a hands-on support, it's not a consultant, it's more like hands-on support that knows both worlds and tries to close the gap in a constructive way by not saying like, you should be doing this, go ahead and do it, right? Go ahead and close that gap. It's not meant to replace SRE, it's not meant to replace the product engineering or the platform. It's a way to have somebody that talks to both. So, with that introduction, I will go to what it is. And I use the forward deployed senior software engineer embedded inside the product team to continuously observe, build, and improve the reliability layer of the stack, which doesn't mean it's SRE. It's in between SRE and the product, sharing that context. We understood, as with AI, that the most important thing when it comes to running these systems and running these platforms is understanding the full context, because there are a lot of things that we do as developers by design to create these systems. We put business rules, we put things that oftentimes, come later to bite us when we are running the thing. But this idea sits in between all of them to work with all of them, right? To be actively engaged in a daily basis with the software engineers writing the code, the platform engineers running the actual infrastructure, and the software architect that it's like, balancing in between these worlds. So what we are after and what we have achieved by introducing this to some of our first pilot customers is going from these, dashboards. We build dashboards, we have numbers, we have all of it to have something that you can really, by using AI and other tools, and I'll show an example later on, to have the real diagnostics, not just like a bunch of screens that shows numbers and things, so we can proactively detect and fix issues as they happen. The difference between being on call, and this has been something that we have experienced running systems for our customers, when you get an issue, that issue, it's an elevated error rate on those, errors that we are all familiar with, and all of a sudden it's like, no, but that's a bug on the source code. And we need to wake up another developer or somebody else to go look into the code, to go fix that code, because it's not a platform issue. And the idea of, by leveraging AI and, all these concept of agents and all the tools that are available, going from monitoring to building actual companions that do the monitoring for you.
Johnny?
Yeah.
Guy Courier, Futurum Group. Is this a shift in Southworks thinking that led to the Scout, or is it something that the Scout leads organizations to do? So it's an interesting thing. I think it's a combination of our own experience doing this and a gap that we observed while working with our customers in all the different silos at the same time. So we have a concept that we call the dev crew that goes, sits with the SREs and work and do services on that front. We have our concept of fire teams that work on migrations, on building these apps. And we do consulting in the traditional sense, like this is how the architecture should look like. But when all was running, we found this connection even with our own teams. So we were operating something, and eventually somebody will go and say, hey, this is a bug on the product. So we understood that there has to be somebody there doing this, communication and fast prototyping and showing the art of possible hands-on, not a consulting like, hey, here is my PowerPoint deck, this is what needs to happen, but somebody that is actually capable of writing that code and say like, hey, this is what we can do. Some of the teams will take it and evolve it, but lead the prototyping and the
I would say, innovation from the ground. No longer like a thing, because there is another thing that we have observed with AI. The number of lines of code that we write every day as, actually writing code has decreased. We rely on all these AI tools and stuff like that. So we need somebody that is capable of prototyping fast. And it was kind of a mind change, if you will, that there is a lot of, I would say, you treat the AI as something really, you are against it or with it, right? So you have people that says like, no, all of it, nothing works, like ChatGPT is great, but when you try to take it to reality, it won't work. And then you have people that says like, it's a solution to world peace. It can do everything, it will do everything. Like we have a bug, we have AI. And we were like, the technology is almost there. I wouldn't say like it's done, but it's capable of helping a human in that loop to really accelerate the prototyping process. Therefore, we said like, hey, we spend a lot of time working with our customers from the consulting side, trying to craft these roadmaps. This is what's going to happen. And as with everything, there is a big quota of trust and a leap of faith that you need to take when you say like, okay, I'm going to embark myself on this project. So we are trying to change that by bringing someone on the ground that works with the team and says, hey, here is the prototype I built, it's working. We can now chat how we want to iterate this, but it's no longer like, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Give me $1 million, 12 months, and I will come back with the solution for all your problems.
I was going to wait a little longer, but he opened Pandora's box. So you had a Venn diagram of engineering SRE, and Cloud Scout would be in the middle, but isn't that the point of SLOs and SLIs? The contract, but the proper way to run SRE is you take the business, you take the the SRE, you build a contract around SLOs and SLIs, and so I don't know, it's not a clear picture if I understand SRE the way I understand it.
So that's a great question, and you are right. But one of the things that we have seen from working with these organizations that have mature enough to say, hey, we have contracts and we have somebody that is orchestrating those agreements in between the teams, it's that their position, like the internal position of these groups, whether it's like the product teams or the platform teams, is to build defensive barriers to say it wasn't me, right? So when you are trying to say, hey, we are noticing something, no, it wasn't me, like my logs are clean, my alarm. So the role of the scout, ideally, is to look at the root of the problems and try to create a fix. And I will show using AI and MCP servers, and it gets really, really interesting in such a way that it won't happen again, right? It's an attack rather than a defense of like, okay, we'll create this barrier here. It's like, how do we fix the problem from the root rather than creating new policies and new agreements in between us to say whose fault was that?
But I mean, not to belabor it, but that's the whole point of an SLI is that there is no fault in the contract. It is abstracted away by definition. By definition.
Well, that's the thing.
Ask another question. So it seems to me like you're probably not focused on a legacy software, right?
How so?
Well, like a banking application. It seemed to me it would be very hard to sort of contract in somebody who has to fit into something like Capital One, which has, at probably now 5,000, but used to have 20,000 Java developers, and then say, okay, we're going to be that intermediate, like where our day job is going to be coding banking transaction tier 0 applications, but we're also going to figure out the infrastructure. Like, I don't think you can find those kind of people.
So I would say that the scouts are scarce because who do we put in that role are people with specific domain expertise. And you will see from one of the examples that I brought that you need to know the industry. So if it's banking, is somebody that has to have the banking experience and has grown their career in both ways. But we prioritize the domain the subject matter expertise when it comes to the domain, because otherwise it will be really hard to plug and play. Because one key component to that would be the fact that you need to also understand the business. In those discussions, when we are doing this, you have a product manager that comes with, hey, this is what we are trying to achieve for our customers, right? Then you have the developer that it's focused on how do we make these transactions, and then you have the 3949 promise that somebody else is taking care of. So dealing with that requires a higher seniority and domain expertise, because you cannot parachute into a bank if your whole experience has been, I don't know, writing retail or media or something else. So it's a really interesting senior profile, and it's meant to wear many hats and should have had that experience of wearing those hats. Otherwise, it would be impossible to really capitalize on the business knowledge and knowing what it takes to work on a tier 0 transaction application. Good? Okay. So what do we use? We use MCP servers, we use copilots, we create custom agents to find patterns and try to surface the decision to a human in the loop, right? We don't, based on our experience, and hopefully the technology will evolve over time, we don't trust 100% the solution to the AI. It's not like, hey, now I have my agent, it's auto-healing. We'll look into MCP servers and fix everything and anything for me. It's more, these are the patterns that I'm seeing. How about we take a look at this, and that, and it becomes an interactive conversation with the agents and so on. So the idea is that this Scout turns telemetry into action.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
This might be a really dumb question, but are Scouts human?
Yes.
Okay.
No, yes. And it's a great question, because everybody talks about agents, and it might have been like the name I chose for agents, but it's not. It's a human.
All right, just making sure.
That works with it's a senior engineer and an automation companion. Okay. That was good. And the idea is that, again, it's embedded with the product and the platform teams on these daily and weekly things. It becomes part of the rituals of the teams. It's really embedded and spends time with our customers. It, again, as I was saying before, it's not trust me, it's like I'm looking at what you are doing. These are the ideas that come to mind, and this is what I could prototype that solves part of that problem. It's KPI driven. We try to figure out, where are the issues, whether it's like a signal versus noise, like I'm getting tons of alerts, so nothing it's important anymore, or whether it's the reliability or the time to resolution and how that works. And, we believe that it takes up to 3 months to get embedded into the customer. And after that, if our customers don't see value, we open up to say like, okay, that's fine. Now we cancel and move on. It's our take on software, on the forward deployed engineering for SRE. As to your question, it's a human that sits at the keyboard writing code that talks with an agent that drives or writes the MCP servers to find patterns, draft and proposes fixes, and then becomes the final decision maker, right? This was what I meant by not delegating 100% to the AI. But one of the things that it's interesting about this is that we try to have that idea of end-to-end look, right? So there might be issues, there might be drifts, there might be bugs, but what's the actual problem takes more than an alert on Slack on a log. And I'll show that in a minute. But the idea is...
This is Tony with Tectone. Real quick, on that last bit, you mentioned that you have the human agent in there, then you have the AI that's analyzing and kind of assisting you, and then it's making determinations. is there some second level of human interaction so you can verify things are being done the way you want them before it actually applies these fixes?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. The idea is that we use the AI companions to figure out the root cause, to communicate the root cause, to go deeper than the actual error, like, hey, I don't know, an HTTP request payload is bigger than supported.
Yeah. Whatever the scenario, it's
whatever the scenario. So you go down, you figure out, you do the RCA with AI, and then we craft the pull request, and then the final approval and maybe the tweaking on how the issue is fixed, it's run by a human.
Okay, so that closes that loop.
Yes, and the idea is that we generate, and I'll show this on my example, sorry, we generate knowledge as we go. This means that we want to move away from things are happening magically, like, hey, here is a fix for a problem you didn't know you had,
right,
or where this fix is coming from, or who changed that. So we also rely on the AI a lot of the, I would say, documentation process. Why things are changed, where it come from, like, build me an RSA, we'll review it if it makes sense, how it's working, and so on and so forth. But have that process with a proper human in the loop that, works as a fail switch that can say, hold all this, start over, and I'll show an example in a minute. But the idea is to document issues that in such way that both sides, whether it's SRE or product, can understand that a tweak on the source code, impacted beyond what you thought, right? Like you are missing a validation on a payload size when uploading a file. Well, that trigger a bunch of errors and a bunch of alerts and things like that, and all that because of a business requirement that wasn't met. And those sort of deeper dive analysis that you can do when you have the compute power to do so.
And I assume there's going to be some sort of an audit trail, logging,
yes,
et cetera. You can deep dive if you need to.
Exactly.
Now, Southworks typically embeds someone in the product team, the client product team, isn't that right?
Yeah. Yes.
So when I see product team there, I ask myself, who? Is that the embed, or is that
the
client product team?
It's a client product team. So we want to surface, like, our product teams, we call it fire teams, the ones we do the migrations and, re-architecting and modernization of the applications, are built to do things and move on. We don't want to put our customers on a endless retainer for doing that. We might do managed services to, evolve the platform, but all the work that we do on the product side and the way our customers come to us, it's because our ability to, build, document, and move on. So the idea is that we share that knowledge back to the customer product team so they know where it's coming from, and closes the loop and enriches the ultimate owner that are they. Them.
Well, that's the top part. That's the knowledge. I'm looking down here and seeing that the automation is built.
Yeah.
And then the product team adopts.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't want to adopt.
Yeah. That's how the knowledge comes back to the scout, because there might be things that they say, like, no, we don't want to, because, I don't know, there is something that goes against our policies, or there is a feature we are working on that goes against these, and things that we might not know. That's how the knowledge, it's a circle, and it doesn't go one way only from us to the customer.
Right. One of the principles of Agile and of something else.
DevOps.
Well, DevOps, but I was thinking more pilots, more generally. One of the principles is that there's no such thing as failure, because should it not be adopted, incorporated, or should it regress, or any of those other sort of things, it's not a failure because you learned something.
Yes, as long as you learn something.
So, so part of the value proposition here is a maturation of the product.
Yes.
Right? Even if things don't get adopted.
Yes.
And
you know what? You are touching in something that it's really, really interesting that we have seen with customers. that it's the lack of documentation or the lack of knowledge properly, like, hey, we haven't done this, or why we present something and it gets discarded. If they don't have that practice, it will come back. And we see that as maturity or helping them mature, that it's like teams change, the industry, people move around, so you would switch and somebody would come back and say, hey, I have an idea. And it's like, hey, we tried that before and this was the reason why maybe the business wasn't ready and now it's ready. But it's a way to re-eval and have that context while producing these iterations of the software product, that you have enough context to don't go into battles that you already fought, if you will.
Yeah.
And the best consulting companies are the ones that actually teach a client how to fish. Yes. And their goal is to get out of that business completely. Mm-hmm. Now, it sounds like you have built not a model to permanently embed, right?
Sorry?
When she asked the question,
that's part of the Southworks model.
All right, but there's questions on that, which is in sort of DevOps or in general, there's no such thing as done.
Yes.
There's no done. So the real question then is, do you have a setting goal for an organization to basically work their way out of working with Southworks? And,
yes.
And how do you set those kind of goals to begin with? Because it doesn't sound like, you talk about the embedding and then we don't know much at first. So how do you set sort of the expectation that we're going to be here till you get to here, and what does here look like?
And that's why we always start with like, okay, we need 3 months to work with you and start producing stuff to set the baseline. And what we've seen in practical experience can go two ways. One is like, this is our baseline. There are things that we would love to happen, and we can say, okay, it would take 6 months, 12 months to get there, and then we shake hands and move on. And there are others in which our customers don't know that something is wrong, and it's really hard to explain what's broken, right? So we prototype the things and build the knowledge around to say like, okay, here you have an example of how to deal with this situation. This is the way you should evolve it. We can help you evolve it, or here is, take it. And they might say, that's great, but now I have this problem, right? Or that's great, move on. We try to be pretty transparent on the assessment because that's our definition of success. So I wouldn't go in and say, hey, we will, reduce the number of issues that you have if I don't know how many issues you have. It's not the same thing if you are being bombarded every day with 1,000 notifications to somebody that gets 5. So I don't want to make promises that I cannot keep. So our idea is to explore from the ground up, like not by, coming up with an ideal, this is a solution to all of your problems, and then drive a sort of roadmap and say like, okay, here you have something that it's working, that it's not like, hey, in the traditional consulting world, that would be an assessment or an evaluation that would turn into a PowerPoint that would be, sure, now give me $1 million, 12 months and come back later. Our idea is that from the embed is to build something that it's actionable, that it's hands-on, that it's working, and then offer like, hey, we can help you evolve this, or here is the instruction manual. Go ahead and, keep it yourself. That's the goal, to maximize that idea of independence. And as Guy said, like, the role of the scout is to help organizations mature and put the technology to work to them. It's a maturity thing that oftentimes in the traditional consulting will be like, sure, I have 1,000 slides PowerPoint. I feel smarter, but it feels years away, like all these Horizon 3, 5, whatever. And on the other side, it's like, we want to be tactical enough so you feel that evolving and truly an agile way of working. So, and we believe that AI has opened up the game to really prototype fast and show value. And if it doesn't get adopted, it's like, sure, we've learned something. we won't do this again. We'll find the solution.
Yeah. This sounds very similar to the TAM program. Is this something that is built in, or is it an add-on to your service?
It's a great question. We started piloting this with customers by saying like, hey, we will show you what we are capable of if we embed and figure out the problems. We have had, and mostly when implementing AI, and I'm not talking about building chatbots, I'm talking about like putting AI to work for infrastructure work or software development practices in general, that it was this deadlock when it comes to decisions. I don't know, should I use Copilot, Claude, Sonnet 3.5, or it's Codec better, and everybody pitching thousands of lights and stuff like that. And that was the angle in which we started building this as maybe the entry point. There might be a longer term project, something that needs to be built. There might be a managed service that, you know, it was that you lack the capability for maintaining or doing the upkeep of your system, and what you really needed was a smaller team looking into the constant evolution, modernization, because as you said, there is no done in DevOps. Or maybe it's that you just needed, you know, somebody to break the analysis paralysis for the decision. So it's kind of an entry point that we decided to turn into a practical activation of the technology. So it's hands-on. And oftentimes we recommend this to our customers because a trend that we are seeing in their organization, or when they pitch a problem and they come to us with like, hey, let's build a 2-year roadmap for AI adoption. We have all these 1,000 tools and we never try them. I read an article that it might be good and I'm like, let's try 3 months with something that it's more flexible, more agile, and nimbler, and see how your organization adopts to that. And when we can figure out how the next 12 months would look like.
So it's a limited term engagement, and you can figure it out from there based on customer adaptability and usability.
So I like the wedge idea, like the companies like trying to figure out all the tools and should I use MCP, should A2, whatever. And, you know, and that idea of like in embed, personally, let me try it out. But then the counter to that is my concern as an organization for these things being dangerous and unsafe. Like I haven't thought through an MCP architecture, particularly in a bank or a place where, you know, they're zero trust, you know, OCC regulated, zero trust compliance. So it seems like a little bit of a dichotomy there in that I'm going to help you get started because you're all over the map. Nobody really knows what to do. But the same token, I'm not sure I want these outside people implementing MCP or, you know, or sort of agentic type processes in a world where we still haven't figured out what that looks like in our world.
And
does that make sense?
Yes, definitely, because that's the key to why it's embedded, what it's embedded inside of the organization. Because one of the patterns that we observe, even when pitching our own AI projects to bigger enterprises, it's that concern that, you know, you design, you build a castle in the air where all these MCP servers will exist and everything will be connected to the internet, and you have all these fantastic models looking at your source code. And then all of a sudden comes the InfoSec guy, the CIO, the CISO, whatever name you choose to it, and it's like, yeah, 90% of it won't happen, right? We haven't seen that, you know, level of pushback when it comes to working integrated. We have seen it from like the outside pitch. So this is also an answer to that it's like, sure, we have seen companies saying like, hey, sure, you can use GitHub Copilot and all these models or bring codecs and then it's dead on arrival, right? Like it won't happen. So that's why for us, for this model to work and to become the real fire starter for the evolution of the organization, it needs to be embedded. It needs to be sitting on that table where, you know, OpenAI is a no-no, or DeepSeek, no way we are going to rely on a Chinese model, or, you know, we want to operate with Bedrock, or we want our own private deployment, and I can get 1,000 Blackwells if I want. So those conversations that you are not exposed unless you're sitting at the table, are crucial for pushing the envelope forward.
Right, but it sounds like you're offering this as a service. So are you bringing some kind of pre-programmed building blocks to the table, and are those getting reviewed by these clients, or are you kind of greenfield building as you go into a new client each time?
So we bring the knowledge, the experience, and the expertise of doing it. We found that with AI, there is little to no value to bring actual source code, because for the InfoSec process and all those things, even though if it's AI generated and such, they feel more comfortable on a greenfield. Okay. And seeing, how the building is coming together floor after floor gives them more confidence than, sure, I'm bringing an agent that will take care of solving.
Everyone loves a black box.
Everybody loves a black box until you meet with a CISO or somebody that says like, sure, open the kimono, and it's like, yeah, that's not possible.
They get pwned. Everybody loves a black box too.
Tobias Sundaram. I run products for iCOUNTER. I've been with the organization from the start of iCOUNTER. I think I've had the opportunity to talk with some of you in the past. So glad to again connect the gap. Satya covered quite a lot about the overall, what does it mean to do a true AI infrastructure and how could we protect? There are different deployment models customers do in AI. I'll cover some of them and how we protect. At the end of the day, our focus is data because we think that's the core which drives the whole operation, right? So that's what we are looking core. When we talk about data, one of the things I want to add to what Satya was saying earlier, that we talk about data, it's just not the data alone, it's the data, the configuration of the different services which the customers actually have. And so when you think in terms of recovery, when you think in terms of data resilience, it's the entire set, not just the sources alone. So I want to let you know. Before going specific into some of the AI, I just want to give a quick recap about our platform itself. Brian did a very high-level overview early on. Now I'm going to double-click a little bit and then share with you. As all of you guys know, there is quite a lot of data sources customers actually have. A big problem which our customers have told us is half the time they don't know what they actually have. Sounds a little crazy, but that's a reality, right? If many of you might remember, that's why in the traditional on-prem world, people used to have the application discovery mechanisms. This, especially with the adoption of cloud services and the adoption of SaaS, this has become a big problem for customers. So the first thing we help customers, we don't even charge for that, by the way. We help customers discover their entire data estate, which is all their SaaS, PaaS, DBaaS, IaaS, all of their services we iteratively discover. That's the first element to the customer. We discover, help them visualize, auto-categorize, and tell them what's protected and not protected. That's the first step. Especially when you think in terms of AI, and the breadth of data sources their customers have, this helps them quite a bit. That's the first one. And this is not a one-time thing, as you guys can imagine. It's a continuous operation, and we help them. That's the first part. Obviously, once you do that, we are a company who focus on data protection. We help them protect the data. The key thing I'll probably tell you, our focus is, again, protecting it extremely efficiently, and that's the big thing we focus on. How do we, the breadth of coverage, which we'll talk about, but it's also the efficiency we deliver in. The third part is around recovery. At the end of the day, the only reason customers are protecting is to be able to recover. One of the beauty of iCOUNTER, our cloud platform, is that we are able to recover the data granularly, because like Keith was asking, hey, what happens if there are some individual JSON files corrupted, things like that. We can get you the entire data set. We can get you even granularly the single JSON file which you messed up. So we can do at different levels, we do that. This is just not at the file system level. Even at the SaaS level, we can do the granularity which the customers desire. The other one, which there was a lot of discussion on in the last one, was around the migration portability for customers. We don't think of it as a migration. We think of it as a data portability for customers, because customers want the freedom of choice, and we are there to help them with that particular aspect. That's what we do. We do all of this capability for a wide range of data sources. We have over 90 plus integrations today, right? That is something WISE is actually important, especially if you're doing a true enterprise. You will actually have it. I'll share with you some data points which we actually have as we go further. All of this, one of the constant requests we get from customers is that data resiliency, when in terms of from a ransomware, things like that, especially even in the world of AI and some of the SaaS, customers are right now extremely worried about protection against ransomware, malware, things like that. The good thing is we have HiQ R Shield. This is our essentially the way our cyber recovery solution. It is not an independent product. It is something we have built into the fabric of our HiQ R Cloud platform, right? So our R Shield, which is a cyber resiliency solution, is built into the platform itself, so it's not an independent solution. Just a little diversion here, but I wanted you guys to have not big, since all of you guys are not very familiar with HiQ, I wanted to give you a little deeper into what we do. So now let me get into specific in one of the AI. You guys are all experts here in the AI space. Satya talked about one of the things with building AI models and what customers are doing, things like that. One of the other more popular use cases you guys know in a lot of customers is creating a RAG workflow, right? Essentially, how do you train your existing LLMs, not train, enrich your existing LLMs with additional internal data sets? And this is pretty much, you go into most large organizations, they are running an in-house system, RAG system, so that we can actually enrich it with their internal data sets. This is a very common one. But one of the core elements in this thing is the vector database, right? Because how do you actually enrich your information? It's the information stored in your vector database. The thing we are very happy to say is that HiQ is the only one which actually today is one of the first enterprise backup vendors to be able to deliver backup for vector databases. When we talk about vector databases, we talk about things like Pinecone and Redis. This is in addition to even some of the classic databases actually have vector information stored right now. We can actually predict them too. But these guys, specifically Pinecone, as you know, was specifically focused on vector database. Redis, even though it's an in-memory thing, has a significant vector database focus. So that's vector data focus. And that's one of the reasons I think we started with those things. In addition to those two databases, a big part for a lot of our customers is that the additional data sources which actually play a part, right? It's not just the public cloud data sets, it's a lot of the other SaaS data sets which also come into picture. Let's talk about it here.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second there on that previous slide? So this is Dave Graham again from ML Comments. So how do you start to handle this idea where lots of these storage companies or storage platforming companies are starting to embed their own vector derivatives into their databases? I'm thinking about the VAST of the world, the Pures, the NetApps, or whatever with InsideX and all the things that they're ending up doing. Because that starts to change your locus of data, starts to change your locus of where these where this metadata is, where these embeddings are, is something that's very, very circumspect to the data itself, right? And it's now embedded in a system that you may or may not have direct access to, a shim to, you name it. So how are you looking forward to that, or how are you trying to understand that, especially in a I'm hosting my own cloud kind of world?
Totally. So it's an excellent question there. So the way we, one of the strengths of HiQ platform, I'll tell you, is that even though we talked a lot about the cloud, we actually not just actually do public cloud and SaaS, we also do a lot of the on-prem infrastructure. Talk about the large data file systems and object storage is running on-prem and the virtual machine application infrastructure, we protect that. And that is one of the benefits of us. So it's when we talk about our overall solution, we can cover a breadth of data sources for customers. That's how we look at it. And there was a question early on to saying, hey, what happens when the customer data is distributed across lots of different, not just one place, not just one cloud, it's across the spread. The beauty of HiQ is that from a single pane of glass, the customer is able to manage the entire data set. That is one of our unique strengths. And that's why we have had a relatively very rapid growth in this space, because the customer is able to protect data spread across multiple different locations. And that's how we look at it. That said, I mean, every storage vendor is trying to add it. As they start having new APIs, we are starting to integrate. I would not say that we are doing everything possible, but that is that is a significant effort going on in this space.
I have one more question on that. This is Kelvin Hendricks Parker, CTO 6 Feet Up. The solutions you mentioned here, you've talked a lot about cloud native type aspects, but what about if someone's doing kind of roll your own or Kubernetes, they're doing Postgres and PG Vector? How does that play in with these tools?
Okay, so for example, if customers want to run a Postgres on their own and run Kubernetes, for example, let's say they're using GKE, and it could be on the cloud, I'm using GKE, it could be on-prem too, it doesn't matter. And if they're running Postgres along with GKE, that is something we absolutely support today. That is natively supported in the platform for customers who want to do that. Right? We are using a services as an easy example to talk through, but we absolutely support customers running their homegrown stuff.
So Ray Lucchese, Silverton Consulting. What's the integration between iCOUNTER and Pinecone or Redis? I mean, so PG Vector and things of that nature. You can do a lot of things from a standard database perspective to download the database and things of that nature. Do you have something special with respect to Pinecone and Redis? Integration-wise.
And from an integration perspective, we are using their standard APIs and using their standard export methods, and as each of these solutions offer, that's what currently we are doing. We have a lot of other integration discussions going on, but I would not venture to discuss the future. But as of right now, that's the way we do it.
Okay.
Cool. So we talked about RAG. I mean, like even when it comes to data warehouses, right? People typically think of it as one monolithic data warehouse, but as you guys are very familiar with it, there are tons of data sources which feed into this big data warehouses. And the thing is, as Satya mentioned earlier, it is not just one thing, it's multiple streams of data coming from different locations, different data sources there. Some of the things Satya covered earlier, things around object stores and databases, and he covered there. The thing is that we do have a lot of customers using SaaS, and they are extremely critical data source because, for example, BigQuery has over 80 different SaaS applications pumping data into it. That becomes very critical for customers. The question is that a lot of people think SaaS is actually fully protected by the SaaS vendor. As you guys know, they do protect the infrastructure, but the data is customer responsibility. You guys are very familiar with it. And the SaaS data is very vulnerable. When I talked about vulnerable, people sometimes really, is that a problem for customers? I'll share with you we actually did a study. This is done across 500 different customers. And this is part of the SaaS resilience report, which actually was published, done by independent study here. The thing which pretty much if you look at this number of SaaS applications, 96% of them have definitely increased their consumption of SaaS. It's not a question if, it's the question of how fast is it growing, and that is something there in every customer, right? And when we talk about 46% of them have significant increase, because one of the beauty of SaaS, it's easy to use, and it also means it's also easy to turn on, and lots of customers end up turning it on. And this is just IT tracked SaaS, I would probably say, because there are other SaaS which is shadow IT, shadow SaaS that's still absolutely there going on, and customers are trying to get them under control, and we are helping them with. That's with the SaaS adoption there. The second part, one is the adoption itself is growing. Second thing people ask us, is security incidents really a problem in SaaS? This is real data coming from customers, not us saying something, right? 65% of them have said some data breach. 65% of them, I said there are some data breach in the past year. That's what they said. And the average number of SaaS application data breach incidents in the past year, just asking the customer, how many have you had? The average was 2, right? It's a significant impact customers are having. When we talk about the number of SaaS and people say, is it really growing? Here's just a data point for you guys. Last time when we ran, 139 was the average. And right now this year it's 159, the number of average SaaS applications growing. The rate of growth is absolutely there. The larger the number of data SaaS store resources, the more risk the customer actually has. That is a problem. And when things go down, what is the level of disruption will actually happen? And 65% have said, because of the 65% that have experienced a data breach in the past year, 87% of them have some level of disruption, right? And one of the things customers told us is that on an average, not even a high average, they said it takes the minimum of 5 days to recover. and each day on an average costs a minimum $400,000. This is just the cost of the recovery thing. It doesn't include all the people, time lost and so on. That's something like that. So that's the level of impact customers actually having. So what is that have people generally done here? If you look at the backup vendors, we on an average, people of the entire all the backup vendor enterprise backup vendors, there are 5 is the number of SaaS they've added in the last year. That just doesn't because there are over 30,000 SaaS applications in the world. There are over 35,000 exactly to be the right number. Over 35,000 SaaS applications, and there are only 5 being added. At that pace, you cannot do that. That's why Haiku, our cloud, we have built a platform that customer can add new data sources very, very quickly. And one thing I probably want to add here is that the way we leverage is we actually leverage AI to build our SaaS modules if people are interested in that particular one. We built the entire model so that we can accelerate the development. That's one of the reasons. For example, there was a vendor who said, oh, we are going to support Atlassian. So Atlassian, as you know, is one company, but they have I think some of you are focused on the DevOps side of the house. I can tell you this. Atlassian is a company which actually has lots of different modules. Jira Search, Jira Service Management, Trello, Bitbucket, and so many other things they actually have. The vendor who actually said they're going to support Atlassian supported one SaaS, one Jira alone over the 12-month period, right? Whereas in Haiku, if you look at it, this is the number of protected SaaS applications which we actually have today. And so the thing which we have actually added, right, the breadth at the speed at which we add is significant here. And this just to give you the power of our platform and why it's critical here. If you have any questions, always stop me. Sorry, I'm going to get excited and continue to talk. So the big part here is that, especially with some of the things which people get, how does some of the data warehouses get fed, right? They have information coming from some of the SaaS applications. Let's say, for example, they have tickets coming, issues coming from Jira. They have a service management from Jira Service Management, or they have data coming from Box being fed into that, or they have some of the logs fed in from the different applications into the infrastructure, into some of their services. The question is that how secure and compliant they are. We can actually keep the data very secure. We obviously protect, as we talked earlier, we protect against ransomware. The original source, as well as your data warehouse, we can actually keep it safe against ransomware. That is something we do. And we support a wide range of clouds, which the customers actually cloud for the data sources where the customers keep the data. That is something we do. And this is a key part here is that it's done at scale. The big part for customers is that can you actually deliver it at scale? And what is the level of SLA can you actually provide? That is something we do. It's the breadth of coverage. It's the question of can we actually give you freedom from where the data is stored and how fast can you actually recover? A big part. But
Guy Courier here. Future. So data protection in SaaS, it's kind of obvious now, but I didn't realize how crazy it must be. But it sounds like the key to addressing by crazy, I mean, just you alluded to it earlier, 10 different ways, 20 different, 30 different ways to connect, to access the data, formats, like all this other kind of stuff. Like it's every SaaS vendor is going to be a little bespoke. They have their own infrastructure anyway, blah, blah, blah. So if you're using even 4 or 5 major SaaS applications as an enterprise, good Lord, the exponential complexity of it boggles my mind anyway. But I feel like you sprinkled a little magic AI pixie dust on this when you said we use AI to, form our connections. Is that, maybe that's an unfair way to state it, but is that more or less how you are addressing that craziness?
That's a great question. So AI actually helps us accelerate it, but a fundamental thing which we have to do here is to build a platform which allows us to, it's extendable modular platform, right? There are 2 aspects to that particular one. We have made the platform.
Now you've used the magic pixie word platform. So explain what you mean by that.
Totally. Yeah. So the way Haiku R Cloud is actually built, the core data services, meaning things around like the policy, the scheduling, the databases, how do we manage, track the retention, all that stuff is done in the core platform itself. given the, let's say tomorrow you have your own magic application, right? And if you want to protect it, the way we have done is that we have modularized. You can create your module. The customer can create the module, the partner can create a module, or iCOUNTER can create a module. That's the level of flexibility we have actually provided. It's a very simple, small set of code which only focuses on the SaaS application itself. They don't have to worry anything about data protection. They just have to say what's the data structure of the SaaS application, what the APIs they have, and things like that. And then we will automatically be able to create the module for that, right? So we will automatically, because once you understand data structure, the reason we need to know the data structure, when we build a backup solution, we want to build a granular, deep data protection, not necessarily just the dump and restore. That's easy, right? I mean, that's not good backup solution or more.
Okay, so that's awesome. So then next week, the SaaS vendor makes a change. And then at the end of the year, they do a major upgrade. Each one of those can break that integration.
That's an excellent question there. So one of the things as part of a lot of times you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people think is adding SaaS is very easy. It's just a one-time operation. It's not a one-time operation, right? It's a continuous integration with the new services which are coming up and keeping it up to date and making sure nothing breaks. The good thing is that I'll tell you, of working with so many of the 90 plus integrations, in general, people have the fundamental principle we do is that we only use APIs to do integration. We don't do any backdoor, because once you do backdoor is the problem. So only go through the APIs. That's number one. We do follow the vendor's best practices when we do that thing. That's secondary there. Even with that, there are some special cases when we do have issues with the partner changing the API without recognizing the impact on the side impact there. But in general, this is one of the big effort which iCOUNTER has taken, is the continuous validation that nothing breaks, especially in a SaaS, because those are continuously updated, and we got to do that. That is that's one of the beauty of how we have done it, and at the scale at which we have done is magical with the platform.
Yeah. So do you have an internal SLA or something similar so that you can say, okay, we detect the break, because it's just inevitable. We detect the break within this amount of time, or within an hour or something, and we pledge a repair within a day. And so if your snapshots are at this interval, you may have this gap, or whatever.
That's a great question. So the way we do is that, I wish it was every hour. The good thing is that we, as part of our cloud operations continuously, we do actually monitor any breakage in backups. Well, it's actually, because typically the first thing you see is the sign that something backups start failing in a particular environment when things happen. So we do actually continuously track that. That is one thing we do. I wish the answer was like within an hour I'll fix it. No answer.
Oh yeah, that was my magic pixie dust. Go ahead.
So that is not the case. But the thing is that because we are continuously monitoring it, and because we are using API, the number of times we have seen this, because we have done this for many years now, number of times this is like probably 2 or 3 in the entire last 12 plus months, I would probably say. So the times it breaks is small. The key things is that when it breaks, typically within a couple of days, we are able to update, because it's completely transparent to the customer, except for the initial failures. We will, as soon as we detect it, we fix it, update the platform, and then the next set of backups automatically catch on. That's the way we do.
Okay, I want to be clear. I think all of that is really reasonable. And I think you have to have this cascade of events. Well, maybe it's just 2 steps, which is number 1, there being a break in the integration, and then number 2 being an incident at the time of a break, that it would really be a case of data loss, and that's probably a really low probability occurrence. But that is, as an application manager in an enterprise, the sort of thing that I would be thinking about is all the bad experiences I've had in the past with various solutions, whether homegrown or otherwise, of actual data loss because there was an integration that was broken and no one noticed for a month.
Totally. And I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people, that's why they think I can write a script and it'll dump it every month and it's good enough. Like, nope, it's actually more complicated than that, right? You said it there. And the other thing for us, I will tell you also, is that, let's say typically the vendor doesn't break everything. They break 1 or 2 APIs, or the behavior of an API is typically what they do. So even when we do, we back up everything we can. And if there are 1 or 2 things failure, we mark it and we continue on, because that way we can come and catch up later. That's how the smarts are built into the system.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Cool. That's a quick thing. 2 other things I'll mention, and I probably will give time for questions. One of the thing which Haiku does very differently than many other people. Is the data itself, right? When we talk about data, typically people, especially when you're running AI, people are very, as you all know, classic enterprises are right now paranoid and they want to have control of the data they do, which is good for the production data. They don't think in terms of backup. We are a fully managed service. So people say, oh, so you own the data. What we tell customers is that you should always own the data, never give up the access to the data. That is a big thing which Haiku does. We give the customer, make sure that even the backup data is always with the customer. Obviously, you don't want to put it along with the production data. You want to keep it separate and make sure it's worm locked, make sure it's fully isolated from any access and things like that. That is something Haiku automatically does it for you. So that is something we actually do, but we make sure the data is always with the customer because we don't want the customer to ever take our risk. I mean, they should be completely under their control, and that's what we do. It's a big difference compared to many others because a lot of other people take the storage from public cloud vendors and repackage it and sell it to customers on a premium. We don't want to do that. We say customers, you can get it much more cheaper directly from the cloud vendor. Go ahead and get it, and then we will help you keep the data safe in your own control. That is something we do. Yeah, this is different than most others. That's why we explicitly call it out. Okay, so this is again, when we talk about that, people say, where can you store the data? Where can you keep the backup data? You guys heard Satya talk about data domain as running on the public clouds. That is a choice. But in addition, we can support all of the hyperscalers. We can support other SaaS, other S3 compatible vendors like Wasabi, Cloudian, OVH Cloud, and so many other vendors we actually support. And the good thing here is that in all of these vendors, we support not just one tier of storage, we support all of their tiers of storage for the customer. That is one of the big benefits here. And we can support all of these different SaaS, being able to protect it onto these storage there. Yeah. Just coming to a conclusion here, and we probably will summarize and leave it open with the floor. AI is hot, and lots of customers are doing. The good thing we are seeing is that as data protection is not the first thing many customers think when they go use their AI projects. But as they're going into production, as some of these large data warehouses are going into production in the cloud, customers are realizing that they have to protect them. That's the trigger right now. If you guys I'm sure many of the data protection vendors don't talk about it because this has not been top of mind for customers. But we are starting to see that as customers going production, they're seeing a need to do that, especially in a compliance industry, and being able to get to a good data model, data library, being able to get the copy of the model and what it was, along with the data sets, along with it being able to prove it to compliance for their regulatory needs. That is something there. And we got to keep it safe, and that is there. Haiku is there to help them. Many of you guys asked, can you get to a particular checkpoint? Absolutely, we work with it. Everything we do in Haiku is through the REST API. This is why it sounds a little probably crazy for some people. We back up all of their data repositories too, like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. Their orchestration tools like, for example, if you end up using like a Terraform cloud provider, Terraform providers, or if you end up doing things like Circle CI for some of your DevOps management, you protect all of those infrastructure too, not just the core data. People think of object storage, think that it's all the things around it, right? Or it could be even things like cloud functions. We protect all of them for a customer so that the entire data set can be brought back, not just the data, and then you wonder what the hell to do. Sorry to say that, but the question is there. So this the entire stack we can help the customer protect. That's why keeping the data there. So we talked about data lakehouse and vector databases. We are happy to say we are one of the unique data protection vendors at the enterprise class, being able to protect across my different public clouds, being able to do this thing. That's a quick rundown. Any questions? Brian, Satya, Andy, I'm here. And any questions we can answer for you guys.
Hi, it's Ivan McPhee from Gitter. I have one question. Yeah, you've spoken about your customers, but can you give us some indication as to some of your top customers, the size of them, the scale they're actually for Haiku?
Sure, that's a excellent point there. We have over 4,600 customers as a company. Our primary focus is the way we would tell is that from volume perspective, it's our mid-market and lower enterprise. That's our primary focus area as a company. But that said, we have some of the largest. The unique thing, interesting thing about Haiku is that even though we are a young company, we have a number of federal agencies. All of the U.S. Armed Forces uses, not just U.S. Armed Forces, there are a bunch of other countries we can actually name. They use Haiku. And if you think in terms of large organizations protecting us, I'll throw out some things there. Customers, for example, the large pharmaceutical industry, the guys who are in the large chip making industry, or essentially, I would say, IT, technology, in the technology space, customers with tens of thousands of employees in that particular one. We have, for example, one of our customers have 200 different sites and they actually protect using Haiku. And one of our customers in the cloud actually has data, multiple petabytes and petabytes of data spread across 5 different regions backed up through Haiku. Those are some of the samples I can tell you. That's dimension. We also have some mid-market customers with 500 mailbox users to 2,000 mailbox users, things like that. So it's a quite spectrum we actually have. And probably mention one other thing and probably stop, sorry. For example, in some of the SaaS, we have customers running like 30,000 mailboxes and things like that. So it's quite a big spectrum we actually have.
Yeah, I was going to just add, Subia, that I think the customers that care about sovereignty and coverage, right? It's not just about being able to back up all of these workloads, but I don't want to give my copy of the data to you. I want to hold it to myself. We're one of the only SaaS solution that offers customers, full ownership of their data sets. That the control plane is delivered as a SaaS, but the data plane always sits within the 4 walls of their virtual boundaries, right? I mean, and the data always stays in customer tenant, never leaves. We don't exfiltrate that. And I think the customers that value that are typically the ones that kind of jump into this bandwagon and run with it. Why I think we have such a strong federal presence as well is that we keep the data, right where the customer can control and see and manage.
So, Malcolm, you had a question. Malcolm, looks like you raised your hand.
Yeah, hi there. It's Malcolm Boudin, MNB Networks. Just quite a straightforward question. Is the service available globally, everywhere, or is there any restrictions in any regions?
That's a great question, Malcolm. So our service is truly available in every part of the world. It runs on anywhere your hyperscalers run, let's say, put it that way. Anywhere your Google, Azure, AWS can run, we actually support it. There is no restriction on that. I'll give you guys a real example. One of our customers was using 4 regions, and they wanted the new region was coming up and for one of the hyperscalers in Mumbai, and they said, "Hey guys, there's a new region coming up, and how long will it take for you to support it?" I said, "The day when it's available, you can use it." They said, "What do you mean?" Because we obviously use their APIs and things like that, which all the cloud vendors, our system is built to truly scale like the cloud. And that's how it has enough intelligence built in to make sure the data movement within the cloud too is done extremely efficiently. And that's a big part for the customer to keep the cost in mind, because as you guys know, if you end up ever do even within hyperscalers, you guys know this, within hyperscalers, even if you move the data between regions, there is an egress cost, right? As a backup, you don't want to run one region, say, I want to back up everything. You're like, nope, you will end up paying tons of egress costs. You will just kill the budget. Don't do that. So that's where the Haiku intelligence is built in so that you can run in the right region, in the right place for it.